It's concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino? Blimey.
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. I really appreciate your company. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, I'm here until 1 o'clock and plenty to talk about as always. If you do miss anything of the show or missed anything this week, you want to catch up with it, you can go to my YouTube page. We've called it cunningly the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, so you've got no excuses. You can find it easily. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking about the family of 3, including a small child. Of course, that would be exactly who they would choose to come to be the first asylum seekers to come to Britain under Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out exchange scheme with the French. The Home Office announced that the family had been flown into the UK on a commercial flight, of course, organised and paid for by the British Embassy in Paris. Actually, it was paid for by the British taxpayers because we foot everything. The British Embassy in Paris doesn't have any money. It's just our money. We won't know who they are, won't have any details about them, but they're going to be here in return for the, I think, 4 we've now got rid of. But we are looking at some 2,500 in total arriving here in return for the ones we do actually deport, assuming we can. And here's the question, though. How many of those that we do actually grant asylum to are actually genuine? Because I think you and I are pretty sure that not as many of them as genuine as those asylum tribunals and the Home Office think they are. For instance, one man who uses the name DG Osama, who filmed himself illegally arriving here in a dinghy in 2022 after passing through at least 3 safe countries on his way from Afghanistan. He was granted asylum by the Home Office and absolutely fine, apparently, that of him to stay here, apart from the fact that 2 years later, so fearful was he of going back to Afghanistan because of persecution he could face there, he went 5,000 miles back to, guess where? Afghanistan on holiday. He even posted photos of himself at lovely tourist sites and beautiful nature reserves. Home Office has done absolutely sod all about it since, even though he's quite clearly not a legitimate asylum seeker. Don't worry, we're still footing the bill for him. It's amazing, actually, really, how he had the money to pay for a 8-week holiday. I mean, even I don't get 8-week holidays, guys. Anyway, we're going to be talking about that. Plus, we're going to be talking about Andy Burnham. Is he the king over the water to take over from Keir Starmer? He says Labour MPs are asking him to stand. First, though, he's got to actually win a nomination for a Labour seat that becomes vacant. Then he's got to win a by-election and then win an election in the Parliamentary Party, all while we have a sitting Labour Prime Minister, ostensibly with a majority of 160. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Plus, more problems for Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. He did, we now know, according to emails, ignore clear warnings in writing from the Electoral Commission that he did have to declare £740,000 worth of political donations to his think tank Labour Together. He failed to declare them, later claimed on the advice of a lawyer it was an admin error. Over 3 years he failed to do that. Now the Electoral Commission has fined them. They say it's all done and dusted. The Labour say it's all done and dusted. But these new emails that have been leaked out one by one this week do suggest that there's a possible question of criminality. Should the police get involved? We'll talk about that. Plus, male offenders are still being held in a women's prison in England, despite the Supreme Court ruling expressly stating very clearly in April that sexes must be segregated. Ministers have admitted that 5 trans-identified men are still being held in HMP Downview in Surrey, despite concerns they could pose a risk to female prisoners. It's really very simple, isn't it? If you're a man, you're in a man's prison. I don't know what's complicated about that. We'll talk about all of that, plenty more besides, loads to talk about on top of that as well. And all of it with Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer, who joins us regularly on a Thursday. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Do want to start with conversations about some of these migrant stories because they are just infuriating. But our question to our audience today, although, as you always know, guys, call it about anything you want, you get to decide. But I particularly want to know about your thoughts on Andy Burnham. He is the Mayor of Greater Manchester. He's a very popular mayor. He won re-election. He's a good political performer. He's good on the telly. He played a blinder for the people of Manchester during lockdown in terms of getting extra money for them. He looks set to challenge Keir Starmer for the leadership. There are an awful lot of hurdles along the way, but he's not being shy about it. Interview after interview saying, whoa, people are calling on me. Labour Party conference starts this weekend. We've got some very difficult elections coming up next May. It could be very difficult for the Prime Minister. Got the November budget as well. That's going to be pretty hard going as well. So is Andy Burnham the answer? Do you think he would make a better Prime Minister? Would you support Labour once again, maybe? Would you consider going to Labour if Andy Burnham was leader? Or do you think he'd be just as bad or even worse than the current incumbent? I would love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text us on 87222. You can get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls, of course, are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Philip Ingram, I'll come to your thoughts on that in a moment. But first of all, can we talk about this first arrival? Yesterday on air, I was literally going, when are we hearing about these people supposedly arriving? We were told last week they got 1 away. Now we're told a total of 4 people finally got sent over to France. I mean, whoop, whoop. I mean, get the confetti out and all the streamers and the party.
Oh, yes.
I mean, really, if you're just listening to that, that would have been really weird without the hand movement. But anyway, and finally
the hand movement was weird.
It was all weird. Sorry about that. And then a family of 3, parents and a small child. They become the first asylum seekers here. It's interesting, isn't it? It's a family with kids as opposed to young men in their early 20s who are getting. But I mean, what do you make of this? The first one in as opposed to the one out that we've seen?
I've got a question as to whether this family unit counts as one of the 1 in, 1 out.
Good point.
Or whether, because there's 3 in it, it counts as 3 of the 4 that have gone out.
Does the child count at least? I mean, again,
exactly.
Going to go to school, going to need housing.
Exactly, and this is where the government is being very opaque in its statements.
But also, they have to have had some link with Britain. Assuming they speak perfect English, but my thing is, here's the thing: it's not like a mother and a child joining joining the dad doesn't sound like it.
No,
A family
it
of
doesn't.
3 suggests mum, dad and kid, doesn't it?
But
And they're in France. I thought France was safe.
Yeah, apparently reading the story behind this, there is now a website where individuals can apply
it's
for...
set up by the government,
and therefore there's now a legal route for people to apply for asylum. So there's no need for anyone to come to this country because there is now an official legal route.
Yeah. Except, as we know, an awful lot of the largely young men arriving from
I've got no
on
right to
those
be here
boats.
at all.
Everyone says, well, if you set up, this is the bleeding heart liberal argument, but if you set up legal routes, people wouldn't have to come over the dinghies. Most of those people would not get through on the legal routes. And again, we are a welcoming country. There may well be people. I mean, the thing is, there's about 5 billion people around the world who could claim that they would have a better life in our country. How many do we take? If you're already in France, I would suggest you are already safe.
And the other thing is, there's a lot of talk about this reducing the migration, the illegal migration that's coming across the channel. My maths was never brilliant, but 4 out, 3 in. Out of what is it?
I mean, it's
41,000.
32,000 now.
So we've got 31,999 left, but we still have announcements of more to come in.
But well done, everyone. This is a great success for the government. Well done, well done, everyone. What is even a greater success is the proof, again and again and again, that the rate of criminality among people who are coming here as illegal migrants, and even among people who are granted asylum, is, I'm sorry, unacceptably high. I mean, one too many, but unacceptably high across the board. But a small boat migrant, DJ Osama, arrived here 2022. He happily filmed himself going through all these safe countries in Europe, and then filmed himself on the migrant boat, then filmed himself with the RNLI rescuing him. And then around the sites, here I am in front of the, the Tower of London. And he granted asylum. No doubt he made a wonderful sob story about being the victim of goodness knows what. Granted leave to remain here. 2024, apparently, all suddenly much safer. And he headed back to Kabul on holiday. I mean, 5,000-mile trip. By the way, all these people, destitute, took 8 weeks holiday. I mean, from what job, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There are many people in this country who could afford to go 5,000 miles journey to go to the other side of the world, to Afghanistan. He was there 8 weeks, filming himself, national parks and, and all that, having a lovely time, and then comes back again. Home Office, not an issue. I mean, no monitoring, no interest. The guy's got a passport, right? He couldn't have gone in and out of the country, right?
Correct.
So they have a record of this man who apparently claims he cannot possibly go back to Afghanistan because it'd be unsafe. He goes to Afghanistan, he comes back from Afghanistan, and nothing is done. Same as nothing is done about £600 round-trip taxi journeys for asylum seekers and illegal migrants who want to go back to a doctor they first met when they first arrived here. Stuff that is just not remotely available to ordinary Brits. The Home Office is just that they are incompetent. They're, I would say, malign in terms of their willingness to allow these people into this country, and they just don't care about taxpayers' money or safety.
Criminal spending of taxpayers' money. There's one more movie that should be made about this guy that went off to Afghanistan, and that's the movie that is from the police body cams as they kick his front door down. They arrest him aggressively. They take him straight to Heathrow Airport or any other airport.
They will pay him £2,000 to get on a plane.
And pay him nothing and shove him on an aircraft. And if they can't land in Afghanistan, give him a parachute and drop him out. I'm sorry.
Loving your work
He needs to be taken out of this country aggressively, and that's where the government can start to wrestle the initiative back. Unless they start to do that, unless we see that, then
but
these
again,
people
it's like,
that are taking the pee.
Again, like on all these things, did they know? Did they not? Did they know? If they didn't, they should have.
Correct.
Once they knew, they should have taken action. No action. And again, with all of these things, whether it's about £600 taxi fare, whether it's about people working illegally in the black market as Uber Eats or Deliveroo riders, or whether it's people going on holiday to the place they said it's far too dangerous to go back to live in, whatever it is, their abject lack of ignorance is scary. Their failure to act once notified. But the fact is, they go, "Oh, we should do something about this." Now it's on the front page of the Sun. Now, I'm sorry. I don't think that government should only act because something's on the front page of the Sun. I say that as a Sun columnist. I think it's outrageous that no action is taken until it's on the front page of the Sun. This is public service, journalism to actually expose this stuff because nothing happens without it.
And we see in other European nations. In France, there was an individual who criticised the French government. I think it was an imam from Algeria criticised the French government, and within a day or so of him openly criticising the political structures and Christianity and the French government, he was on a flight back and thrown out of the country. The same European human rights legislation applies to him. If the French can do it, why can't we?
I know, it's so painful. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. But let's also talk about Andy Burnham, the king over the water, or at least, a couple hundred miles up the road from Westminster. He has done a number of interviews, New Statesman, very much Labour magazine, but also with the Telegraph. Not really, typical Labour territory. He is the mayor of Greater Manchester. He's a fairly popular figure. He's very camera friendly. He was a regular on the show during lockdown. He fought a very good fight for people in higher tiers in Manchester to get extra help for businesses and individuals, and became I think that was really the making of him as someone who tried twice and failed to become Labour leader, but he's basically being seen as the great white hope for Labour. Lots of Labour MPs were told, muttering about he's the only one. You look at the cabinet, you go, well, who else is it? Angela Rayner, Rachel Reeves, Wes Streeting. He's desperately trying to sort of move to the left, but he's seen as too much for a Blairite, I think. Remember, Labour Party members are basically Corbynistas in their hearts. They really are. But he's being touted, and he's certainly not saying, he's not doing the usual, oh no, I'm completely loyal. No, he's not even saying that. He's saying, well, people are asking me. Quite a lot of hurdles, aren't there? He's not an MP. Small point worth making. You need to have an MP seat comes free and a safe one. There aren't many safe Labour seats around Manchester anyway, at the moment. Even if one did come free, how do you make sure you get the Labour nomination? Now, there was an MP who was going to leave for ill health. He's been talked out of it, basically. No doubt been promised a peerage or something in return. A nice cushy job somewhere. That's how these things work. So he's got to wait for a by-election, and then he's got to become the candidate. He's got to win. Reform will throw the kitchen sink any of these events. And then, of course, giving up being the mayor, and then you become a backbench MP. You lose your fiefdom, you lose your power base. Would he then be able to challenge Keir Starmer? Opportunities arising, budget. It's going to be very difficult. May elections, you've got Scottish Parliament, Welsh Assembly, all the London boroughs, various mayoralties, in other words.
And the scandals that are going throughout the Labour Party at the moment as
non-stop incompetence scandals.
Exactly.
But here's the thing, is he the answer, given that a lot of the criticism of the public is that the party is too, the Keir Starmer's too left-wing. Burnham wants to take the party further to the left. More borrowing, higher taxes for the rich, 50% tax, which will lead a load of them going, bye-bye, and then not paying tax anymore. What do you make of his chances?
Andy Burnham, when it comes to national issues, is doing what most politicians, no matter what flavour they are, but Labour are specialists at it, is saying what he thinks that the wider party and the people that support it want to hear. He's done good things in Manchester. You can't knock him for that.
I think he's been a great mayor of Manchester. I'd love to have him as mayor of London, frankly.
And he comes across very well, as you said, on television and when he's articulating things. But just before the Labour Party conference, to turn around and call Keir Starmer effectively incompetent, and it's quite clear he's up there and stalking for the leadership at a time when the Labour Party is suffering real issues. Both within government and those that are advising government. This is not a good move. No. And we're going to start to see further backbench rebellions, I think.
But there's also going to be a backlash from number 10.
Of course there is.
We're definitely going to start seeing that. There's going to be some stories emerging.
They'll support the reform candidate that stands against them.
They really would, wouldn't they? At the end of the day, it would be up to the NEC, which Keir Starmer has large amounts of control over, to decide who is going to be the candidate. Surely, you're just going to block him. But then that also shows you frit if you know that this is an option. Bear in mind, Boris Johnson with the Tories, when he came back in as a backbench MP to then lead the party to that electoral victory. The question is whether Andy Burnham is what the country wants or needs. And again, more borrowing, higher taxes. He wants to. One of his big things is he wants to raise council tax. People in the South East in more expensive homes. Those will be those homes that people don't want necessarily to spend more money on. They haven't got a choice if you want to live in the South East and you work here, and you're having to pay a ridiculous amount of money for a sort of 3-bedroom family home, which you could get for a few $100,000 anywhere else in the country, and people having to pay over $1 million, mortgaging themselves to their hills. It is. People think, people are like, they're swanning. If you look up like a £1 million property anywhere in the country other than the South East, it's got a tennis court. It's got a pool, okay? £1 million property in London can be a flat, for goodness sake, and we're not talking Mayfair. So, but he's talking about wanting to rejig all of the council taxes. You do that, you're going to upset more people than you please. People won't like it, and that's the reason why it's not been since 1987, I think, the last time it was done.
And there's another immediate issue, and something Labour have never really been able to get their head around. If he comes in, he's another white, pale, male, stale individual.
It is hilarious that the Labour Party that is so obsessed with diversity, equity, inclusion.
Can't get a leader.
First woman this, first woman that, ethnic minority this, ethnic minority that, and they just go from one white straight male. I couldn't care less. I've no interest whether you're a man or a woman, black or white.
Doesn't matter as long as you're competent.
Competent.
That's
the bare minimum.
That's the criticism that'll come in straight away.
Talking of old male, pale and stale, again, which I don't think should be...
We're talking about me again?
Yes, sorry. Boris Johnson. You could give him a run for the money on the hair front, couldn't you? Boris is much neater. I think he dyes his. I don't think it is still blonde at his age. He's older than me. Boris Johnson has done an interview. Harry Cole from The Sun, who was on the Mike show a little bit earlier, blasting Nigel Farage as usual, defending the Boris wave of immigration, saying the big concern is illegal migration and we had control of migration. Yeah, and when you had control of it, we didn't expect you to bring in 1.2 million illegal migrants, mate. That wasn't what we asked for. It wasn't the deal. Here's my thing. I don't know why people are still treating him as a serious person anymore. He's a busted flush. There are so many people who still think that he could come back. Seriously, over my dead body, that man is back in any position of power over anybody in this country.
Everyone said that after Trump's first term. And Boris has got this presence and the buffoonery and everything else.
Trump didn't alienate his own supporters. Starmer alienated Brexiteers, people, libertarians, people,
But everyone in Britain is alienated at something, and therefore, Boris has got this twinkle in his eye that can get people to go, I know he was like that beforehand, but it's just Boris.
No, literally, no.
We'll see.
No.
Yeah.
I'll put my £100 to charity. I'll put £100 to charity. He doesn't come back to a frontline role. End of. Let's also talk about Morgan McSweeney very quickly. Prime Minister's chief aide. Tories are gunning for him. They've got a load of emails. They're slipping them out one by one. But it's really very clear now. He ran this organisation called Labour Together, think tank. He says there was a phone call, they've got no record of it, Electoral Commission, but there was clearly an email in which they wrote to him saying, you must declare all donations over a certain amount. He did not declare those donations. They were then later fined. And they were fined because for 3 years he didn't declare donations. His legal advice, we've had that published as well in leaked emails, was very clear that, you should say that it was an admin error. But there's an email now showing very clearly he was told categorically you must declare all of these donations. And he didn't do it. That is very different from an admin error, OK? And he is the Prime Minister's chief aide. We're now looking at a serious question mark over criminality in deliberately hiding donations, when this was an organisation aimed at basically wresting the party back from Jeremy Corbyn and then the leadership ambitions of Keir Starmer. Big question marks over the right-hand man of the Prime Minister, who he's given full confidence in, which is always a bad sign.
So he'll be gone this time tomorrow morning.
Good luck, Morgan, love. Yeah.
But this is where Keir Starmer needs to be decisive. He needs to get rid of him immediately, because if this is what's dribbled out, there's going to be more that's going to dribble out.
Oh, they're clearly doing it page by page.
Exactly, and it is highly probable, I'll not go any firmer than that Keir Starmer knew all about it at the time, because he was his right-hand man and leading his campaign. And therefore that raises questions of integrity over our Prime Minister. But then there's been so many questions.
Had those, at the end of the day, if there were a criminal investigation on Keir Starmer's own metrics, when he said before, there would have to be. But again, this is I said on the show yesterday, I don't know why the Tories want to oust Morgan McSweeney. He's the chief architect of Labour's work right now in government. If I were the Tories, I'd want to keep him there because he's doing a magnificent job.
He is, but maybe they're hoping that it'll stimulate a no-confidence vote on an early election. Well, but that'll be Nigel.
A no-confidence vote doesn't lead to an early election. That's the thing. It really doesn't. But anyway, we shall see. Who knows? Never say never in British politics anymore, apart from Boris Johnson coming back. 100 quid.
I nearly got you.
No, apart from that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all that we're discussing. There's plenty more besides I want to get to, including President Zelensky's warning to UN once again that, that Russian aggression will spread beyond Ukraine. It already is. These cyber attacks we're seeing and calls, and the like. I'd love to hear your thoughts on anything and everything we're talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Up next, your thoughts on Andy Burnham. You're getting on the lines. Do you reckon he would make a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer? I mean, to be fair, so would this mug. Is it a very high bar? We'll talk about that. This is Talk.
While Reform are in the ascendancy and they're ahead in the polls, Boris still has an appeal to the exact target voters that Reform are going for. Those people that perhaps voted Labour for a long time, then they voted for Brexit, then they voted for Boris in 2019. They're disappointed with the government, they're disappointed with the Tories, but Boris is the one that could, upset the Reform apple cart. So almost like sort of Van Helsing, they're sort of trying to drive a stake into Boris is down and out, but they just want to really make sure he's not coming back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:28 is the time. Coming up very soon, we're going to be talking to the Conservative MP and Shadow Foreign Minister Andrew Rossendale. He'll be live in the studio. First up, let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts on Andy Burnham. Is he the king over the water? The Mayor of Greater Manchester is making no secret of his ambitions to challenge Keir Starmer for the Labour leadership and indeed the premiership of this country. But would he make a better Prime Minister, I'm asking you? Well, let's get to the phone lines. Marcus is in Liverpool and wants to have his say. Good morning to you, Marcus.
Good morning, how are you doing?
Very well indeed. What do you want to say and what do you reckon on Burnham?
I don't think he's the right person, only because I know, like, it says I'm from Liverpool, but I'm originally from Manchester, and I've watched, even though he's very good and he's got a very good voice, Manchester is in just as worse state, really, as London in parts. And I just think he wouldn't have he needs someone similar to him who can go and do the job, but I just don't think he's the right person.
I mean, again, I've always got the impression that Manchester's doing rather better than London, keeping sort of, if he's going in terms of crime and things like that. You're saying no?
No. If you go in, I mean, you only have to go in on the weekend and see what Piccadilly Gardens is like. I mean, they call it Crackadilly Gardens as a joke. So he's not doing the job that everybody thinks he's doing.
So the media stuff looks good. He's in his T-shirt and he's looking mad at the people, but actually on the ground, he's just as bad as Sadiq Khan. I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, I think I think personally, Labour need to just go.
Well, I mean, there is that. I mean, I suppose it's what Labour MPs and then ultimately Labour members think. Thank you for that, Marcus. Appreciate that. Lots of messages coming in on this. Alan says, who says he's going to win a seat at an election? I reckon he'll struggle against reform. Claudia says he couldn't possibly be worse than two-tier Keir. And James says, us up north hate him as much as we hate Starmer. Vote left, get hate. Free speech is dead because of leadership from both Tories and Labour, hence why I don't trust any of them. Archie says he's got more chance of being elected. Wouldn't be surprised to see him mount a coup on Starmer and call a snap election to catch reform off guard. I mean, that would be brave. John says the Downing Street cat would make a better PM than Keir Starmer. However, that's a world away from being a good one. And Lou Shear says he gave part of his salary to the homeless for maybe 1 year and promised to do more to help the homeless in Manchester. It's now more than tripled. How's that going for Labour promises? Fair point. By the way, Andy Burnham has just been doing another interview. I mean, he's got Beeb interviews, done the Daily Telegraph, done the New Statesman. Andy Burnham, you're welcome on here any time. But he said that that Labour MPs are asking him privately to challenge the Prime Minister. Says he was asked a direct question, answered it directly. He said, it's not up to me, it's not my decision, it's got to be about more than a personality contest, he said. Although at the moment it does seem to be that, doesn't it? Well, let's go to David on the line. He's calling in from Sheffield. Morning to you, David.
Yeah, I'd just like to start off by saying that I'm nearly 70, so I remember when the public utilities were owned by the government and the nationalised stuff and all like that. So I completely agree with him on that. And as far as Keir Starmer, I think that's the way Keir Starmer ought to go. Because
so nationalised utilities, yeah.
Yeah. But the point about this Manchester mayor, and I need him to say this, we've got a fantastic problem with debt, and that debt's, a lot of it's caused by funding the national health. And a lot of that, we've got to say, may be caused by immigration, putting strains on doctors, hospitals, schools, everything else like that. So we need to hear what he's going to do about immigration, and he's not mentioning it as far as I can.
Well, he also wants to get another 40. He wants to borrow. Yeah, but he wants to borrow 40 billion quid to build more council houses. How can we borrow another 40 billion more quid?
Yeah, but listen, I don't disagree with that. You've got to understand some of these policies. I'm for, because I was brought up in the 1970s.
Yeah.
When people went into homes on their own estate, looked after by the councils, and the people who worked in them were people who knew the old age pensioners in the homes. So it worked a lot better. But what I'm saying is, that's okay with me. But if you're coming into the politicians nowadays have to deal with current issues. And the biggest issue is immigration and the strain it's putting on this economy.
And he hasn't got an answer on that.
Deny that. And he's got to come on television and he's got to say, right, I'm going to fund it by debt, which he probably will do, or I'm going to stop immigration, like Farage says, and we you know what I mean, we're going to resolve it that way. He's got to come and tell us what modern policy he's got. He just can't hold back
You can have some popular policies that Labour voters might like, but at the end of the day, you've got to actually deal with the stuff that ordinary voters are also talking about, and they are rather different from Labour Party members. David, interesting call. Thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram, that's a very fair point. We need to know. Again, it's like Nigel Farage. You know, we need to have a range of policies from you if you want to be the next Prime Minister. You can't just go on about immigration all the time. We need to know what you're going to do about schools, about NHS, about benefits and things like that. And the same from Burnham. You can't just talk about let's build more council houses and, I don't know, pay rises for nurses or whatever he'll say. You need to actually talk about how you'll deal with the other big issues of the day, like crime, like immigration and debt.
Yes, but Keir Starmer got in without having any policies. And, you know,
change.
I was
going to give change.
I was talking to someone who was in the front bench in the run-up to the election, and I said, when are you going to start producing policy with plans behind them? And he said, we're not, because the other side are going to lose. So Nigel Farage doesn't have to. He just, the way we have politics by soundbite, he just needs to keep regurgitating the soundbites.
Yeah, and us voters are more for us for not demanding that people tell us what they're going to do. Right, well, we'll take another quick break. Do keep your calls coming in on any topic you want to talk about. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we are going to talk to Andrew Rossendale, Shadow Foreign Minister for the Tories. He's going to be in the studio. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Philip Ingram still with me, delighted to be joined in the studio now. We'll sit by Andrew Rossendale, Conservative MP and Shadow Foreign Minister. Very good morning to you.
It's Andrew, not Andre.
I did say Andre. Did I say
Andre?
Andre?
Anyway,
it's Andrew. It's because I was just reading some news about the former French President Nicolas Sarkozy found guilty of criminal conspiracy in the case over Libya. I mean, name me a French president who hasn't been found guilty of something, but there we are. Andrew Rossendale is here. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's talk first of all about immigration. A family of three are the first, one in, one out. So far, it's 3 in, 4 out of migrants in this little exchange scheme we've got with Emmanuel Macron. At the same time, we've got the news of an Afghan dinghy migrant who arrived in 2022, claiming he couldn't possibly get back to Afghanistan. It was so unsafe, granted asylum, and then sodded off there on an 8-week holiday last year. Home Office does absolutely nothing about it. He's still here. What do you make of both those stories?
So I think the entire situation is an absolute failure of the overall British state. All governments and the civil servants, all officials involved in this have
I think you were saying
failed.
this when the Tories were in charge too, to be fair.
Absolutely. No, I said all political parties have administered what has been a complete failure of policy in terms of protecting our borders, preventing people coming into our country that shouldn't be here. So the British people have really lost patience in this. The stories you've just mentioned, the new policy of one in, one out, well, no one believes that's going to have any serious effect. The idea that an Afghan refugee comes here fleeing persecution or potential persecution and goes to Afghanistan on holiday, I think it shows that the whole thing is a complete and utter shambles. And what's needed is for our government, it's currently a Labour government, I'm not sure how long it will be a Labour government, the way they're going.
We'll come to that.
But what is needed is the government to act in the interests of the United Kingdom. Get rid of the ideology, get rid of all the blocks to solve these issues, legislation that we've passed, ECHR and all the other things that we've discussed.
But why would you ever think they would actually do that? I mean, with the Conservatives, I thought there was a will, vaguely, but absolutely no willingness to find the way, certainly in time. With this lot in Labour, for a Labour government, I don't even think there's a will. Most of those people, when I've interviewed them long in the past as a journalist, they're pretty much open borders through and through. They don't really think it's an issue that people come here either legally or illegally to this country and get to stay here. They really don't.
No, they don't believe in it. They don't really want to protect our borders. They don't really want to get tough on immigration and have a sensible immigration policy that actually benefits Britain. Of course, this all started under Tony Blair. All of this massive, I think, outrageous policy of open borders effectively is what we've had since those years. The Conservatives promised in every manifesto in all those elections, with all the different prime ministers we had, to do something about this.
To bring it down to the tens of thousands net migration.
We failed to do it. Any prime minister, I think, in modern times who saw the importance of protecting British borders and limiting immigration was Mrs Thatcher. And under her time in office, she emphasised the need for those who do come to our country to integrate into British society and to limit the numbers of people coming in.
Well, one person who definitely apparently said one thing and did another when it came to immigration was Boris Johnson. He's done a big interview with the Sun's Harry Cole, who was talking about it on Mike Graham's show earlier today. Boris Johnson defending the Boris wave of 1.2 million arrivals to this country from abroad, largely from the Indian subcontinent. Limited people coming from Europe, but I don't think people were saying, what we really need to do is not have, unlimited migration from Europe, but let's just take it from the rest of the world. That wasn't what the British people wanted when they said, let's take back control in the Brexit referendum, and indeed in the 2019 election that gave Boris Johnson the premiership, confirmed him in it. I'm sorry, but he's been defending that and saying, people are concerned only about illegal migration, not legal migration. Do you think he's right?
No, I'm afraid he's not. So it isn't just about those coming in through illegal means on the boats or however. Lorries it was before, now it's boats.
There's still lorries as well.
There's still lorries too. People are worried about the overall increase in the population, which is unsustainable and is not wanted. And also, we have harmed our own economy by bringing people in who are ultimately not economically productive, in the sense they're not overall contributed into our society.
We were told they were a benefit to our economy.
We were told, but that was not true either. And also, Julia, it's the cultural changes in towns and cities across the country. My constituency is Romford. It's just on the outer edges of Greater London. It's Essex, as you know. But people there are very disgruntled at the failure of all governments to tackle this problem. They see the changes in our local community, and this is replicated across the country. So my party needs to step up. We need to be radical. We need to get a grip on this seriously. And I think that some of the failures of previous Conservative governments need to be called out.
Well, there's an awful lot of talk about Kemi Badenoch's leadership of the party, and looking ahead to, say, the May local and Welsh Assembly and Scottish parliamentary elections, whether or not she will survive past next summer. Lots of questions also now about the Prime Minister, whether he will survive. It is an extraordinary situation that only 14 months into his premiership, with a huge, 160 majority, that Keir Starmer should be facing a possible threat. But Andy Burnham, apparently the King's sailing across the water. The mayor of Greater Manchester is apparently looking to challenge Keir Starmer. He's really making no bones about it. He's been quite honest about it. Of course, he does need to, find a by-election to fight, get himself nominated for the seat, win the seat, and then win a challenge and then a parliamentary election to become leader of the Labour Party. Do you think he would make a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer? Would you be more worried about him being the next Labour Prime Minister and the Tories having to fight him?
I think for the country's sake, I think pretty much anybody would be a better Prime Minister than the one we've got at the moment. We're heading into a very dark place as a country. In every area of policy, this government is failing. It's failing the entire nation. So the quicker Keir Starmer leaves office, the better.
You think he specifically is the problem?
No, I think it's the entire Labour Party, because they are wedded to this left-wing socialist ideology, which is an absolute calamity. It's dragging our country down, and we need a serious change.
Isn't there an argument? I remember a number of Conservatives saying to me on and off air about, if you don't vote Tory at the next election, your audience, they're going to end up with a Labour government. And I remember one of the arguments I put back to them, and many on social media as well, pointing out, maybe, you lot needed to be punished for the failures on issues like immigration and the like, and secondly, and tax as well, and secondly, I was always of the view, maybe the country needed a little dose of what a Labour government would be like, because this idea that, they can promise everything and then, oh, look, it turns out government's a little bit harder than you thought. There are harder choices, and you've got exactly the same financial constraints that the Tories had faced. Do you not think there's actually a strong argument that actually this government playing itself out over 5 years might be a little bit of medicine that the country and the voters need?
Well, it's only when we get a Labour government that people realise how bad it is. Now, Tony Blair actually did quite well to begin with, and people thought he was not a bad Prime Minister.
I voted for him in '97, lots of other people.
OK, I didn't. But anyway, he got in, and we are living with the legacy that he left. He left a terrible legacy for this country, and we are still working within the new constitutional framework that he imposed on us I think, in quite an undemocratic way. And part of this open borders immigration policy was really the kind of policy that started under his premiership. So the Labour Party needs to go from office, but no party at the moment can be guaranteed that they could stop a left-wing coalition. If Labour lost pretty much half their seats, they could potentially go into a coalition with Lib Dems, with Greens, propped up by SNP, Plaid Cymru. I mean, who knows what's coming down the road? But we need a right of centre government, and my belief very strongly is that those on the right of centre of British politics need to start talking.
Well, I was going to say, because you guys on the polls right now are not going to be that government.
Julia, as you know, I believe that our country should come first, and there are times when all parties have to think about what's best for the United Kingdom, and absolutely we need a change of government, and we need a right of centre government. Here's the thing. Whatever makeup.
Lots of people have gone to reform because they don't like the Tories anymore. The Tories joining forces with the reform could damage both the Conservatives. Your Lib Dem wing, third of them, they head off and vote Lib Dem or Labour or Green, whatever it is, and then Reform lose a load of their votes. You're guaranteeing the next Labour government at that point, aren't you?
Well, actually, I'm not coming with one prescribed plan for this, but I do think there's a mood in the country to go back to sound economic policy, reducing public expenditure, seriously dealing with immigration, repealing a lot of the Blair legislation, getting rid of the woke agenda completely, because that's dividing our society. Net zero, well, we know that's got to go. That's completely unsustainable. And if sensible politicians on the right of centre can come together and work out how we can implement such a plan, I think the British people would thank us.
I love the sound of all of that. You're a shadow minister. I mean, some of the things like you said on net zero, that's not party policy. You're going far further than your own leader.
I talk on foreign affairs. I'm a shadow foreign affairs minister, and so here I'm talking as a Conservative MP, representing my constituents and telling you, Julia, what they're saying.
Okay.
And they're saying what I'm saying.
I just want to ask you very briefly about Zelensky. Speaking of foreign affairs, President Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, spoke at the United Nations yesterday. I think such a time rather better than Donald Trump, who flashed a whole load of news stories with his big speech. Zelensky's biggest warning was basically, having looked a bit chipper after what Donald Trump had to say to him and publicly about basically losing patience with Putin, and Zelensky Zelensky and Ukrainians should take back their land and more. We're not quite sure what he means by that. But he's warning that, basically Putin's threat is not just to Ukraine. He's going further afield. We've seen these jets going into NATO airspace. We've seen these cyber attacks. No one is ruling out cyber attacks coming from, Russian paid bots or the Russian government. How big is that threat, do you think?
So I think that Donald Trump, to start with, believed that he could sit down with Putin, sort it out, end the war and move on. Mm-hmm. Actually, we all hoped that could be achieved.
That was never going to happen.
But it hasn't happened. And I think the President of the United States is now seeing that Putin is someone that you simply cannot trust. The Russians are always playing games, and we hear today that there's a cyber attack in Denmark. The other day we saw something happening in Estonia. I think that at a time like this, NATO countries need to stand together.
And do what?
We need to support each other when we're under attack.
And do
that's
what?
The entire purpose of NATO, to make it clear to the Soviet Union or Russia, it's almost like the Soviet Union again, because that's what Putin wants to create. He wants to recreate that system.
How do we make it clear?
So we have to make it clear that NATO is not going to be soft.
How do we make it clear?
Well, first of all, every country needs to pay their way, and Germany hasn't been paying its way.
Well, we don't.
Well, we have paid our way far more than others. But we need to increase our investment in defence far more than we've been doing in the last 20, 30 years. When we had this so-called peace dividend, which actually has been a false hope. We need to start rebuilding our armed forces, investing our defences. Deterrence is the only way to deal with Putin. OK. Andrew Rossendale, very much appreciate you joining us for that. Very quick word from Philip Ingram on that.
Yeah, I think the only message that Putin will see is force, and more Article 4s being signed by NATO is just collective finger waggling and a collective stiff letter. We need to do something more, much firmer than that. Well, we'll talk more about that later in the show. Thank you, Philip. Thank you very much, Andrew Rossendale, Conservative MP, Shadow Foreign Minister, joining us in the studio. We'll take a quick break. Up next, we're going to talk about why are men, whether they identify as women or not, being held in women's prisons. It was mad in the first place. It's also illegal after a Supreme Court ruling. So why is it still happening? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. Oh, God, I've finally got a red light on. Good morning, welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you for joining me. 10:53 is the time. Let's turn our attention to what's going on behind bars. Not the bar, but bars, where women's prisons are supposed to be for, oh gosh, can anyone guess? Oh, women prisoners, yes. Well, apart from when there are men in there. They call them trans women, but they're actually trans-identified men. And it's now emerged that 7 men who claim to be trans have been moved into women's prisons in England in the last year. 5 still remain, despite a Supreme Court ruling earlier this year made it very, very clear that single-sex places were for single sex only, and if it's a women's prison, it's only for women. What is complicated about that? Well, who knows? Let's talk about it with Ian Etchison. He's a former prison governor and author of Screwed, Britain's Prison Crisis and How to Escape It. A very good morning to you, Ian.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, we all remember the big hoo-ha over what was happening in Scotland when Nicola Sturgeon, then First Minister of Scotland, that seems a long time ago, was basically defending having a man who called himself Isla Bryson, was actually Adam Graham, who transitioned miraculously to pretend that he was a woman by putting a wig on and some fake boobs, but it was quite clearly still an intact male after being convicted of 2 rapes. And Nicola Sturgeon was forced in this ridiculous situation of defending whether or not he could or could not go into a women's prison. I think most of us are flabbergasted to learn that so many men are in women's prisons.
Well, yes. I mean, this is pretty bananas, to be honest. As you've said, HMP Downview is a women's prison. Inside that prison is a separate unit called E-Wing, I believe, and that is to house trans-identifying male prisoners. Now, those offenders are allowed to mix with women in the main prison. So to suggest, as the MOJ are trying to suggest, that
the Ministry of Justice,
female indeed, separate female estate, is a bit like saying my bedroom is completely separate to my house. It's ludicrous obfuscation. And it's even worse than that, because we've now learned, and we only learn things about what happens inside prisons because of independent sources like the Independent Monitoring Board in this case, or His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons. We never hear about these things from the Ministry of Justice. But we've heard from the IMB report that the situation is even worse, because where it used to be the case that an individual prison officer would be attached to a trans-identifying male offender when they were mixing with women, this is now not possible, probably because of staffing issues. Yeah. So they're under the supervision, in inverted commas, of staff in the general population of the...
But why do they think they need to be under supervision? Because they're clearly, as men, behind bars, a threat to a woman also held behind bars. I mean, so therefore that tells you they shouldn't be there. I mean, do we know whether any of these men, that's not, I hate when people say male or female, they're men, let's not let them steal these words, men and women. Do we know if they are, are they intact? Have they still got their meat and 2 veg or not? Because we know that the vast majority of people particularly men who do claim they've transitioned, haven't even had any, let alone any surgery, even any hormone treatment. But either way, they are still, they're still a man to everyone else, as far as we're concerned.
Well, E-Wing, the separated unit for trans-identifying male prisoners, was created by 2019. And I believe the concept then was that if you held a gender recognition certificate, and you could be housed there. Now, a gender recognition certificate, as you and I both know, does not mean that you're suddenly transformed genitally into a female. So there are people who are wandering about in the prison, supervised only by officers in the mainstream of the female prison, who are biologically male. Now, anybody that's worked inside a female prison will know how demanding and needy those environments are. So the idea that 1 or 2 officers with, in an environment with maybe 20 or 30 female prisoners, many of whom, let's not forget, Julia, have been in prison with offences connected with them being sexually or emotionally or psychologically abused by men, to suggest that that is an appropriate way of supervising and then pretend, in fact, that E-Wing is not part of the female estate is nonsensical.
I mean, it's madness and it's cruel. And we know there have been cases, not just in Britain, but also in America as well, where, trans-identifying men have gone into prison cells with women prisoners and have sexually assaulted them and had abused them. There have been rape cases as well. I mean, this is not a figment of people's imagination or a possible. This has actually happened. And we also also know that the rate of men behind bars who claim that they are trans, okay, let's just call it the claim that they are trans, is much higher among prisoners who have been convicted of violent sexual offences. And this will come as a big surprise to all of us, that those are the men who want access to vulnerable women behind bars.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's an overrepresentation. The last time statistics were released in male prisoners who identify as women who've been convicted of sexual offences. There is a very simple way to solve this problem, and I've been talking about this for years. Okay, these prisoners, these offenders who trans-identified male offenders, are entitled to serve their sentence with dignity and safety and respect. The same things, incidentally, that are due to female prisoners that are subject to potential harm by them. So what we should do, and the prison service has done this for years, the prison service has units that separate people by virtue of characteristics or offence. They're called vulnerable prisoner units. Yeah. We should set up a vulnerable prisoner unit for trans-identifying male prisoners in a male prison. Yeah. So those people can be safe to be themselves, but they can also be separated from women that they pose a threat to. Yep. And they can serve out their sentences.
Yeah, it's really not complicated, is it? It's such a simple solution, and it needs to be done. And again, I find it extraordinary our own prison system doesn't obey the law, as clearly made obvious by the Supreme Court earlier this year. Thank you so much for joining us, Ian Atchison, a former prison governor. Apologies for the quality of sound there, but I'm sure you understand why we want to get through on that. Philip Ingram, I'm going to ask you for your comments on that a little bit later in the next half hour. Love to hear from you as well, 0344 499 1000. Your thoughts on that? Your thoughts on Andy Burnham? Would he, as many in Labour suspect, make a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call.
Springtime, the folk in this village need to use the old Aussie trick to stop.
Three, two, one.
8722 starting to the word talk. Who would you send to space and why?
The person I would look to send to space would be Mr. Keir Starmer. And then I would tell the Galactic Empire that he was part of the Rebel Alliance and let them blow him away with the Death Star. No Brits was involved, no fingers could be pointed.
You carry on taking the medication, George. Yes, I'd send all the Labour government to space with a one-way ticket and throw in the SNP for being useless. They're all a bunch of... Oh, all right, fair enough.
One person, quite frankly, I think needs to go to space in a one-way journey is Jeremy Kyle. He goes on about his age one more time, how he's 60 this year, he was 59 last year, repetitively over the course of the weeks and months. We have to hear him, I'm 60 this year, I'm 60 this year.
Richard Tice, did you put that cheeky bugger up to that?
I'm hoping he's going to send me the invoice because that was absolutely brilliant.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. It's 2 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for your company. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, whether you're watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's great to have your company. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, also joined by Philip Ingram, MBE. He's a former senior military intelligence officer and joining us throughout the show. Good morning once again to you.
Good morning to you
A little
again.
flag up about what we're going to be talking about in the next hour. And don't forget, if you do miss anything of the show, you can go to my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you'll never have to miss a thing. But we are going to be talking more about the latest migration stories, where we've got a family of 3, including a small child, who've become the first asylum seekers to come to Britain under Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out returns deal with France. Basically, it's the exchange scheme, isn't it? We've got 4 out, just about, and we've got 3 in. Let's see how well that works. I don't think those numbers are going to stay that good for us, but there we are. Home Office announced they've been flown into the UK on a commercial flight. No doubt they've done another one of those expensive either Air France or BA flights. These people have never heard of Ryanair. They really haven't. Paid for by you and me, as this asylum-seeking family will be for the rest of their lives. Just so you know, paid for by you and me. Meanwhile, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, has said the Labour MPs are privately urging him to challenge Keir Starmer for the Labour Party leadership. In numerous interviews he's done in the last few days, and Mr Burnham, you're so welcome on our show. Do come and have a chat. He's accused the Prime Minister's administration of creating alienation and demoralisation with the party. He set out a range of policies that he believes would turn the country around, including a 50% top rate of tax. Well, I mean, that would certainly turn around rich people in this country because they would just sod off to another country, but also higher council tax on expensive homes in the southeast, and £40 billion of borrowing to build more council homes. I don't know where he's getting that borrowing from because we already can't afford the borrowing we've already done, but there we are. It's also been revealed that Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, ignored clear warnings in writing. The emails have been released from the Electoral Commission that he did have to declare that £740,000 in donations for his Labour Together think tank, which he was basically putting together to try and oust Jeremy Corbyn and put Keir Starmer in the role. He failed to declare that. The Electoral Commission fined the organisation, but crucially, did he actually go further than just the admin error that was claimed? Was there any criminal breach there, deliberately just hiding those donations? In which case, should the police, as the Tories have demanded, be called in? We'll talk about that. And 250 Brits every single day are being awarded disability benefits for anxiety since Labour came to power. Disability payments have reached a record high, with 633,000 people claiming for both anxiety and mood disorders by July this year. We are going to hell in a handcart. In 10 years' time, China will just be ruling us. Let's just give in to it now and stop fighting, is what I would say on that basis. All that coming up, plenty more besides. Love to hear from you on any of the big topics we're talking about, but in particular, I want to hear your thoughts on Andy Burnham. Do you think he would make a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer? Love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate altogether now. And text costs $1 standard network rate message. Those bits I have to say. Philip Ingram, as I say, joining me once again. Should we start with Andy Burnham in this hour? He's just doing this whole, you know, when the Speaker is elected, and then there's this, people don't know in the Commons, there's this wonderful thing with the House of Commons Speaker is dragged to the Speaker's chair. And, oh, no, I don't want to. Having lobbied behind the scenes desperately for the gig, because you get the big state apartments and all the glory. And no, not me. And they have to, it's part of the game. And this is Andy Burnham going, oh, it's not me. Moi, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, I'm just trying to run this great city of Manchester, but all these people keep telling me that I should run for leadership. What do you make of his chances of becoming a Labour MP again, becoming Labour leader, therefore the Prime Minister of this country, and would he make a better Prime Minister than the current one?
Well, I have to agree with Andrew earlier. Anyone would anyone would make a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. But and Andy Burnham has, on the surface of it, done good things in Manchester. We're hearing lots of people saying he hasn't
we had a call earlier saying it sounds good, but actually on the ground it doesn't feel any different.
Exactly, and I'm seeing the same on social media. So it's interesting, the persona against the reality that people are giving us, and remembering it's just one side of the reality that we're hearing. But he seems to be
he's a better communicator. We know that he talks human.
He's a much better communicator, but the challenge of him getting a seat, getting elected backbench and then front bench, and being able to garner everything to take over from Keir Starmer, I think reform would throw the kitchen sink and more at making sure that he didn't get in.
Yeah. Well, they would probably be able to block him becoming a candidate, surely.
Well, the Labour Party would try and block him becoming a candidate. Reform would throw everything at winning the election and embarrassing the government. Number 10 would back Reform and throwing everything at making sure that Andy Burnham didn't get elected. And then if he did get elected, they'd do everything to try and keep him.
They could be a parliament challenge. I mean, again, in fact, the system for mounting a challenge on not just a leader of the Labour Party, but a Labour leader who is in office, they deliberately made that harder.
Yes.
It's not quite as straightforward, interestingly, as it is in
the Tory rules.
The Tory one, yeah, they learn from all of that. It is interesting, and again, I do wonder with a lot of people, it's like Keir Starmer being. You can always see he's slightly sort of taken aback, and frankly a little bit. I'm trying to think, annoyed. I'm trying to think of something off, but I couldn't say that. That people are asking questions. It's a bit sort of like irked by, who do you think you are? Political editor of a national newspaper, or asking me a question. You sort of, and the thing is, you don't get challenged when you're in opposition the way he does as Prime Minister. And I think as Andy Burnham, you just simply have not been challenged the way you would be if you were Prime Minister as Manchester Mayor. And it's interesting, he did run for the Labour leadership twice before, 2010 and 2015. I mean, he lost to Ed Miliband and Jeremy Corbyn. What does that tell you? A, Labour Party membership votes left when it can. Keir Starmer definitely played the left card when he ran back in 2020.
Did that cost any money? And where would that money have
I don't know, where would that money be?
Let's
ask Morgan McSweeney. Yeah, exactly. But also that he was called Flip-Flop Andy.
Yeah.
He changed his mind on every policy blowing in the wind. So it's very easy to say, I'm standing up for the people of Manchester, and we can go, yeah, good for you, mate. Yeah, you're a good mate. You're talking about, this levelling up. Well, when's the money coming? Look after the people in the north. Stop worrying about, another infrastructure project for London. Doesn't need any more, thank you very much. I mean, that's really easy. No one's going to challenge him on that. But when you say, OK, what are you going to do about immigration? What are you going to do about debt? What are you going to be about the burgeoning welfare costs? He will face exactly the same problems as Keir Starmer does, who face exactly the same problems as Rishi Sunak did, as Keir Starmer did, as Boris Johnson did, as Theresa May did, as David Cameron. I mean, that's the thing. You don't escape the problems just because you're the new boy on the block.
Yeah, well, and we're seeing him criticising the Prime Minister, but Flip-Flop Andy taking over from two-tier Keir. That's something that is going to be brilliant headlines.
Or nothing to see here, Keir, as he's now known, over his top aide, Morgan McSweeney. Again, if Morgan McSweeney is your top aide, maybe that's the reason why things are going wrong. I know he's been talked about as this architect of this
Boris
amazing...
with Cummings, McSweeney with
Yeah, I know, this
Starmer.
architect of Keir Starmer's great thing. Keir Starmer, we know on the polls, Keir Starmer did not win the election. The Tories lost the election. They've plummeted in the polls on virtually everything, every metric they've done. He's the man who's in charge of everything. All these new phases and new relaunches, everything fails. Every speech hits the wrong note. He hasn't got a clue what he's doing. He's no good at communicating. He's no good at running. But for some reason, the Tories think it'd be a good idea to try and get rid of him. I think they're insane. I think they're the ones who are putting out this drip, drip, drip of these emails regarding the dealings between Morgan McSweeney, again, a man most of us would not recognise in the street, who is this key figure in Downing Street, very much involved in the Lord Mandelson appointment and all of that. But we now know that he was told by the electoral watchdog, the Electoral Commission, back in 2017, that any donation to his organisation, Labour Together, a think tank, would have to be declared. It's in writing, OK? He says he was told that it wasn't needed to be in writing, but there's no record of that phone call. OK, but there is a record of him being told in writing that it was. He then, for 3 years, didn't declare any of these donations. He's got fined. Electoral Commission said it's done and dusted. Tories are now saying you need to investigate, and the police need to be involved, because we now know that he was advised to say it was an admin error when it wasn't. He was told he had to. How you don't admin error 740 grand's worth of donations and not know about it? This is not a couple of taxi receipts,
especially
or
when
someone
you've asked
donating
the question
some
and
t-shirts.
someone said you need to declare it.
Yeah, is now looking very, very dodgy. I mean, I would say this is a story that definitely now has legs. I imagine there are more emails to come. The way this has been dripped out, there's going to be a killer email at some point. The Prime Minister has expressed his full confidence in Morgan McSweeney. Well, he did that in Lord Mandelson. He did that in Angela Rayner. He did that. He's expressed it numerous times in Rachel Reeves, and no one thinks she's long for the job. Do you think it's only a matter of time before he has to go?
Well, Morgan McSweeney has got a defence. As clearly as Glass's prescription isn't right, and I've heard he's off to Bernard Castle to go and get some eye tests.
Couldn't he just ask Lord Ali to give him a new pair? Isn't that what you do?
Yeah, I think he's tearing a leaf out of the Dominic Cummings.
I paid for my own glasses.
The Dominic Cummings book of excuses.
It's not going to fly.
It's not going to fly at all. He has to go. There's too much hard evidence coming out now, and the longer Keir Starmer leaves it, the more he's falling foul of his own accusations of previous prime ministers and not making decisions quickly.
Absolutely, and again, they just keep doing this stuff, and they just virtually every single one of them. I mean, okay, in this case, the Tories are whipping it up, but nevertheless, it was a problem of their own doing. Their unforced errors are off the scale.
Oh yes. Oh yeah, and this is such a short period of time into the government.
Well, this is the thing again. It's the fact that people are talking about Keir Starmer facing a leadership challenge only 14 months into an election where he's got a majority of about 160.
Yeah,
it's quite extraordinary. I've never seen anything like it.
We'll now see the backbenchers forming little factions, and those factions starting in-house fighting, and therefore you'll get fighting in the backbenches. You've got fighting in cabinet already in government.
But the key thing is,
and the thing will rattle itself apart.
Labour voters who are disgruntled and Labour MPs are disgruntled. Labour MPs are disgruntled because they want to make sure they can still, get big fat mortgage like Angela Rayner and pay their bills come 2029. They're facing that threat. They can see the polls. They know what's going on. There's no way they're going to let Keir Starmer now run for another term in office unless, bar a war that changes everything in the polls. And I find that very unlikely. That it would actually change. War's more likely than it changing the polls. I was quite wrong at the beginning. I said, there's no way to oust this guy. He's in for 5 years. Quite wrong about that. Never say never. I've learnt that to my cost. But at the end of the day, whoever's in charge, they are still facing the same issues. And Labour backbenchers, Labour voters, the reason they're annoyed with Keir Starmer is they think he's not right-wing enough. So, apologies, not left-wing enough. They want more money for benefit. They don't want any benefit cuts. They want more public sector pay awards. They want nationalisation of many public utilities. That's actually a very popular policy overall for an awful lot of voters. They are concerned about immigration, but not in the same way that Tory and Reform voters are. More money for the NHS. More borrowing.
Money for everyone.
Higher taxes on the rich and business and all of that. They want all of that. Great, good luck with that. The country will be bankrupt within a couple of years of that. Whereas actually most voters are saying, you need to get to grips with welfare, you need to get to grips with immigration, you need to get to grips with things like crime, you need to get to grips with the burgeoning debt, and also understand really that you can't just keep taxing the rich until the pips squeak, because the pips leave the country. They don't squeak, they go and pay their taxes elsewhere. I know a lot of people, if their tax rate went up to 50%, they're people who came from absolutely ordinary backgrounds, who worked incredibly hard, very long hours, and done really well in life, and they're earning those sort of salaries where it was 150k, you start paying 45% tax, plus your national insurance, you're paying over 50%, over half the money you earn, you're paying in tax. Those people will just say, I'm out. I'm out. And they really will. We know they will, because that's what happens in every country that does that, and that's what Andy Burnham is supporting. But but here's the thing. The thing is, even if they did replace Andy Burnham, do you think it would even change them in the polls?
No, not in the slightest. And the trouble is, what Labour is doing, and Andy Burnham is doing as well, is he's coming at things from an ideological perspective, not a logical perspective where he sat down and planned it. Got his sums out, got his calculator out. Not Diane Abbott's calculator, but a proper calculator, and worked out what sensible policies would be, that albeit slightly left-leaning. He's just coming out with sound bites, and
that's what he did in the last election.
Exactly.
That's why he didn't win it. Flip-flop Andy. Well, we will see. Andy Burnham, you're welcome on the show at any time. Of course, burning on in the background, we've got the background of the economy, low growth, inflation rising, unemployment rising, everything going in the wrong direction, and that budget coming up in November, and there's going to be some horror stories coming out of that. We've also got immigration, horror stories day in, day out, front pages. Even the BBC this week got to grips with, turns out, migrants are getting £300, one way, each way trips to go and see their GPs, and we're paying for it. Even the BBC started waking up to, maybe this is all a bit of a bad idea. That is such a big change. But the latest two stories we've got this, family of three are the first one in, one out of the migrants to arrive in Britain. We've got an Afghan dingy migrant who filmed himself coming over through all these safe countries. He's granted asylum here. 2 years later, he goes back to Afghanistan on an 8-week holiday, films that. Home Office does absolutely nothing. We also know that foreign criminals, even Romanians, we're paying them £2,000 to agree to be deported. Why are we paying people £2,000 of our hard-earned money to be deported, especially Romanians? Seriously, they're in the EU. We can just send them back anytime we want.
We should be doing that, and it's interesting. I read this morning that the Home Secretary is concerned that all of this money is being spent out of her department. She should,
she should know already.
She should know already. Someone in her department has signed this off.
It's only when it's on the front page of the Sun that they actually care about this stuff.
Yeah, and this is where it shows how your journalism holding part to account needs to do more and more and more, because they don't hold themselves to account. They're not looking after taxpayers' money in a way that we'd expect the government to do. They're deliberately wasting it until they get caught out.
I mean, we even had a migrant who got this £600 round trip to go and see his old GP. Seriously, you move house, you're not entitled to go back to your old GP. You have to move. University students, you have loads of people like me, will have a youngster going off to university. You have to transfer to your university's GP surgery, and then you're not allowed to go to your local one. They literally won't treat you because you're not registered at that GP surgery. But migrants alone are allowed to go back. Oh, you first arrived here. Oh, fine, 400 miles away, not a problem. Get a taxi. They're not given a train ticket. They're not given the money for a train ticket, but they are allowed to get a taxi. How dare the Home Office authorise that?
Yeah.
I mean, put them on a coach, lend them a bike.
Yeah, a train ticket's probably more expensive than a taxi, as someone who takes the train. But other things, GPs are going to migrant hotels to deal with them. When's a GP come out to you or anyone else? They're having their appointments taken up and some of them blocked off for the migrants that are coming through. Sorry, if you haven't contributed anything to this country, you're not entitled to anything.
But also, again, if it's an emergency, fair enough. We're a civilised country. Yeah, but well, no, make your own way. Use your Deliveroo bike to go and head yourself to the local custody unit. But again, it's the idea that a bunch of these young men, right? Yeah. I mean, young men don't go to the doctor. You know why? Because they're not ill.
Yes.
They're not ill. They're not. They're not having pregnancies. They're not elderly with geriatric problems. They're not having babies. They haven't got young children. Sorry, the idea that these people should be a priority for healthcare is an absolute sodding joke. It genuinely. What do you make the Boris? Again, all week. It's one of those things about my job, okay? Is it things I swear like a trooper. There are people in the army who would be shocked by the amount I swear off air. Don't do it on air. I'm allowed to sodding. Bloody, I'm allowed to say this. But trying not to swear on air this week has been so hard because
in the breaks I've heard words that I've never heard of before.
The reason why the studio's blue is because of my language during the break about these stories, because it makes me so angry. Again, it's when they say things like, and the Home Office is paying for it. Home Office doesn't pay for sodding anything. Yeah. You do, I do, our audience does. It's our bloody money. Exactly. How dare they? Genuinely, how dare they spend our money on this stuff? It's absolutely outrageous. It really is. Boris Johnson, meanwhile, done an interview with The Sun, and basically he's like, blasting Nigel Farage, and there's all this nonsense about Nigel Farage saying, migrants are eating swans. It's like, Nigel, stop talking abject nonsense. It's ridiculous. This video on social media is about 7 years old or something. But he's also, Boris Johnson, defending his record on immigration. Mate, I mean, Boris Johnson, here's my advice to you. Zip it, mate. Zip it. You've got nothing useful to say on any topic ever again, in my view. Boris waved 1.2 million people imported to this country post-lockdown. We'll take back control. We'll get Brexit done. We'll limit people being able to just come into this country easily as any they choose. And then we took a whole load of people from the Indian subcontinent, and apparently we thought that would be a good boost to the economy. I mean, I'm sorry. Zip it, Boris. Zip it.
Boris believes in Boris, and he's getting airtime. So
I'm annoyed. I shouldn't even be talking about him.
There's clearly other people are interested in Boris, because if they weren't, he wouldn't be getting airtime, and that's the Boris factor. And
you've still got the Nadine Dorries who still think that he's Andy Burnham, the king over the water for Labour, but he's the king over the ex-king over the water for the
Boris
Tories.
Has got as much substance as Keir Starmer hasn't got, and as Annie Burnham hasn't got, and therefore the way our politics is at the moment, it's those sorts of characters that are getting the airtime, and they're focusing on a political party that has got 5 MPs. Reform, and everyone is saying reform is this big threat.
I know. And Ed Davies constantly going over the lib. We've got over 70. Look at me.
Nigel living in Ed's head.
I mean, genuinely, that man talks. If I were Mrs. Davey, I'd be going, are you having an affair with Nigel Farage? Because you talk about him all the time. Can I just come back to the prisoners? And again, people go like, trans women prisoners in women's jail, because I didn't give you a chance to have a word about this before the 11 o'clock news. But this extraordinary revelation that right now, currently, in English prisons, there are 5 men. Again, people say trans-identified, but they 5 men who claim to think that they are women. That's what they are, men who claim to think that they are women. I don't care whether they've had everything cut off. I don't care how many drugs they've had. You're born a man, you die a man, you are always a man, end of. And they're in a women's prison. There was a ruling by the Supreme Court that didn't change the law. It established that the law was and always has been that single-sex spaces are for single sex, and that is based on biology, not on what a man thinks on a Thursday afternoon. And it's that a single place, a women's prison is for women. Why on earth is any man under whatever level of supervision in a women's prison still?
There's no reason whatsoever. And Ian Aitchison, who's a good friend, who's done this, he's been a prison governor, he's been an advisor into government on prisons and all the rest of that. He knows his stuff. He's come up with a perfully acceptable and implementable solution. Why it's not happening,
special units in a men's prison, because they're men, but for vulnerable. What I love is the argument has been that, but these men, some of these men who might have transitioned enough to actually pass vaguely as a woman, although, guys, what do you expect? You don't.
No, you don't.
But even the ones who pass, that they are under greater risk from the male prisoners, that they may be sexually assaulted and like. Oh my God! It's almost like there was a reason why we didn't want men in women's prisons.
Yes.
But I'm kind of with the kind of, I think it's the Jermaine Greers and others who kind of make the point. They're like, not my problem.
Yeah.
As a woman, it's not my problem.
Exactly.
Like you sort that out, work, have your own unit, but you don't get to go to women's safer spaces.
But Ian's idea was quite clear. It kept individuals in a safe space where they could be housed with respect, as any human being should be, no matter how you want to identify.
But you don't get to be a risk to women.
But you don't get to be a risk to women.
I just don't understand why this is up for debate. This should have been dealt with on May the 1st earlier this year. Certainly by the end of this week, they should be out of that prison. End of, nothing to discuss. And it's an absolute. Every single woman in that prison, lawyers need to go in. Sex matters.
Secretary needs to get a grip.
But the lawyers need to go in and literally just say, like, we are going to sue the backside off you for putting the women at risk, as they are doing. Bearing in mind, a lot of women prisoners are not in. Well, most of them are not in for violent crime or sexual crime, as a lot of these male prisoners are, and that they are largely people who've had a history of abuse from their fathers, stepfathers.
They're very vulnerable individuals.
They're victims of domestic abuse. They largely are not. They're not. Yeah. They're not Myra Hindley, most of them. That's the reality. 11:24 is the time. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about, but in particular on Andy Burnham. Would you make a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer? Quite a lot of jokes coming in. Fair enough. Give us a call. 03444 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll get your calls on air. Up next, this is Talk.
could ask them for any intelligence on an individual. You should be able to ask other countries as well. I know that's a little bit more difficult after Brexit, but it's not impossible to do so. But it does make you wonder why people aren't searching through social media records, for example.
Yeah.
It's very clear that they're posting on those. They have a phone, they have access to the internet. So it shouldn't be that difficult. And why, when we find out these pieces of information, why is it only then that we look at, should this person be in the country? We should be doing that right from the start before even granting leave to remain.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:28 is the time. Coming up, we are going to be talking to the Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator about what is going on in politics at the moment, plus the former Head of Health Analysis at the Office for National Statistics, that's Jamie Jenkins, about the staggering rise in people claiming disability benefits for their anxiety on a Monday morning. I get anxiety on a Thursday morning just knowing I'm paying for that, but there we are. First of all, let's go to your calls, 0344 499 1000. Malcolm's on the line in Oxford. You want to talk about Andy Burnham, don't you, Malcolm? Do you reckon he'd make a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Julia. Name.
Thank you very much for your call. Let's move on.
My corner shop owner, it's like saying Andy Burnham would make a better Prime Minister. My corner shop owner, it's like saying that he could run Marks and Spencer's. Andy Burnham is a joke. End of. Bottom line is, he would borrow another 40 billion.
Yeah, that's what he would.
He would renationalise certain utilities, which is a good idea. Can we afford it? No. My mother's 93 years of age. She had a tax bill come through. You've got to pay it by January of £77.26. Why? Because her state pension went up over the 12,575 pence. It's unbelievable. There's only one person that can replace Keir Starmer, just one, and that is Nigel Farage. So if you don't want Starmer, go to the country. That's what you need.
That's the answer. But the reality is, until there's a general election, that it's going to be the leader of the Labour Party in charge. Is there not an argument? I mean, you could argue, Andy Burnham was in government before. He was Health Secretary. He's run a city. He gets re-elected in Manchester. We've had a caller say, look, actually, he hasn't improved Manchester, but a lot of people seem to think he's doing a good job there. That he's got more experience than Keir Starmer, you could argue.
I'm sorry, that just doesn't make sense to me, because at the end of the day, running a city is not the same as running a country.
It isn't.
How often does Andy Burnham have to go abroad and talk to us selling off the Chagos Islands, which we then have to pay the money for?
Yeah, to be fair, Keir Starmer didn't have to do that either.
Yeah, how many of these mayors go abroad and start saying, yes, we recognise Palestine as a state?
Yeah.
This government is a joke, and Andy Burnham will not make any difference whatsoever.
OK, Malcolm, you've got off that fence. Thank you very much indeed. John is on the line. He's in Newcastle. John, you want to talk about migration, don't you? Which is this basically an ongoing topic here.
Hello, Julia. Basically, well done. The chap you had on before last, I thought it was very interesting the way you were talking to him. Basically, we're on about Ed Davey here, the leader of the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party themselves never been in for 100 years by themselves. Farcical, this country is. It's in fact infanticide. On holiday in France, I was told by certain people there that the French give immigrants a tent That's all. There's a holding centres, yes, but there's a tent.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen it in February. I saw it last year, a tent. But we give them the rest. We give them three square meals a day, £38 spending money a week, a lovely hotel, no gas to pay, no electric to pay, no council tax to pay.
Yeah.
This country
access
is
to GPs,
farce. And I blame the people, because the people should stand up and fight that corner, but they don't. I'm very.
Oh, you say that they don't fight their corner. People have voted again and again, even under Keir Starmer, his pledge manifesto of every winning government, every winning party at the last elections since 2010 have promised to tackle illegal migration and legal migration. They just haven't done it.
Yes, well, they're liars to the people. At the present time, you know fine well that the people want to get rid of tens of thousands, and Farage possibly will, because they're not due here. We have now the same population, roughly, as the French. We never did for decades. But the French say, 50 years ago when I went, they said, I come from the land of milk and honey in Newcastle. Yes, the land of milk and honey, because we look after others, but we will not look after our own. That's why we have 6, or now is it 7 food banks, our own people. We can't look after our own people. We don't want to look after our own people. And this Ed Davey, whose party, as I say, has never been in for over 100 years themselves. Oh, yes, there was the Lib-Lag Pact. And yes, with Cameron too, that was a farce, because Farage made a meal of the leader of the Liberal Party at the time, and then we look at it. It's just disgusting.
I think, John, we can safely say doesn't have much faith in any of this lot. John, I'm going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that call. A few other messages coming in on text and tweet about Andy Burnham. Would you make a better PM? Johnny says, well, we all thought Labour couldn't be any worse than the Conservatives, but here we are. Harsh. But fair. Carl says, that's if he wins the by-election. Good luck going head-to-head with Reform. And Ruby says, isn't he up to his neck in this scandal over the cover-up of the rape gangs? I don't know if Andy Burnham is involved with that. I don't know if he was. No. He was in power at that time when it first all emerged. James says, I don't want anybody from the Labour Party to be Prime Minister. And Neil says he needs a seat first. That's not going to be easy with how Labour are doing in the polls. Philip Ingram?
Well, exactly. Andy Burnham's got real challenges, and John was exactly right in talking about the way we should be accommodating these illegal asylum seekers.
Yeah.
We should build asylum camps to United Nations High Commission for Refugee standards, because that's for refugees.
There you go.
That's tents.
And there you are.
I've built them on the sides of hills from the Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia.
Once you go in, you don't come out unless you're on a plane somewhere.
Correct.
End of, nothing to discuss. I'd vote for that. Philip Ingram, thank you very much. Up next, going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be hearing from the Spectator's James Hill. What is going on with Morgan McSweeney? What is going on with Andy Burnham? And all of that besides. Oh, yeah, and does the Cabinet really want to lift the two-child benefit cap? Well, we got that spare £3.5 billion in the coffers? No, we don't. That's up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's turn our attention to more, well, with plenty more of the British politics we're talking about, particularly in Westminster, and in Manchester with James Hill. He's Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator magazine. A very good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, let's talk about Andy Burnham. We're asking our audience today, would he make a better Prime Minister than the Keir Starmer? He certainly seems to think he is. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. 14 months into a new government, 160 majority, and here we are. We've got a man who's a former, Labour frontbencher, who's Health Secretary. He's now a Labour mayor, and he's openly basically saying, hey, everyone, I'm available to challenge the Prime Minister. How do you rate his chances?
Well, look, I think that he's unlikely to become Prime Minister anytime soon, just because of the challenges you've been discussing on your programme today. He's not an MP. The Labour leadership is very hard to challenge for that, all the technical stuff. But, I mean, putting aside the technicalities, is he challenging in the kind of questioning sense of Keir Starmer's leadership? He certainly is, Julia. And I think it's really remarkable that this time last year we were going into a conference season, lots of questions about donations, registrations, and fears about Keir Starmer's leadership. And 12 months on, we're no better, and the polls have only got worse.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite astonishing. I genuinely, the idea that Keir Starmer elected July 24, May 1997, but Tony Blair was elected. Similar sort of majorities in Parliament. The idea that in July 1998 that Tony Blair would have faced this sort of challenge, people would have just laughed it off, wouldn't they? He was in his prime at that time. You mentioned about the difficulties. He's got to, there has to be a by-election in a safe enough seat that he could win, and certainly Reform are saying, and if you want to have a by-election, we will throw the kitchen sink at you. He's got to get selected as the candidate. That will be a little bit of an issue. I'm not sure that the Labour Party, the upper echelons would be saying, oh yeah, let's bring him into Parliament. And then, of course, he's got to do that challenge. What is the process for getting selected for a by-election? What is the process for making a challenge for a sitting Labour Prime Minister?
There's two issues there, one of which is the selection of candidates. That would involve going past the National Executive Committee. Most people in the Labour Party suggest that there are so many allies of Morgan McSweeney, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, on that Burnham will not...
That name just keeps coming up.
Absolutely, yeah. It's sort of like a sort of reverse McCavity. He's everywhere, isn't he? His fingerprints on everything. So the suggestion is that he wouldn't be able to get past the NEC. So that's a huge stumbling block, because of course without that you can't become an official Labour candidate. Were you to get past that stage, you would then need to, if you want to challenge the leader, you need 20% of the parliamentary party. That's about 80 signatures presented on day one. And of course the problem is, as you'll know, Julia, is that unlike the Tories, where you have this system of secret letters going in, you don't know how many letters are going in, you need to have 80 names. And I think given how hard it is to pull off a conspiracy of 8 names in Parliament, 80 seems impossible without word getting out and sort of number 10 trying to clamp down immediately.
Absolutely. And again, also, if it doesn't work, oops, you're in a lot of trouble. You're never going to get ahead in the party. You mentioned Morgan McSweeney. His name keeps coming up. The Tories have got hold of this documentation, some emails that have been leaked about his old think tank, Labour Together. And this was basically a think tank set up under the Corbyn years to basically try and move Corbyn out and put Keir Starmer in. £740,000 worth of donations were not declared. The Electoral Commissioners find them in 2021. It's all been dealt with, done, sealed. But the Tories are dripping out these emails, goodness knows what else they've got, which suggests that it's not done and sealed and an old story, that actually there's quite a lot of evidence now mounting that it was a deliberate decision to hide these donations, having been advised that they should announce these donations, declare these donations. How damaging is this? And for the average, the man in the pub, the old is the man on the Clapham omnibus talking about this?
So I think on the point of how damaging, I would say it's a blow. It's not likely to be fatal. But I think what's so telling about these revelations, Julia, is the timing. And the Tories, I think, detect a vulnerability there, previously impregnable in this position. Lots of people in Labour now quietly suggesting that Morgan McSweeney maybe not the great governing genius that everyone thought he might be.
No, really? I've been lived here for the last 14 months.
Yeah, quite. I mean, if you've got ratings after 14 months that the Tories had after 14 years, it's hardly good. I think the issue, though, is, again, adds to this perception of the government unable to kind of live by the words it set itself. So, of course, in opposition, you remember that they demanded, I think it was a Metropolitan Police investigation into the allegations about Boris Johnson and wallpaper at Number 10.
Yep.
This clearly looks to be heading towards an investigation by the Parliamentary Commissioner Standards Commissioner, and also the Electoral Commission as well. So, I mean, lots of questions, bad headlines, and of course every media cycle, every day that cabinet ministers are being spent talking on that on the back foot, it adds this perception, and it all adds up to next May, when it looks like that Wales for the first time in 100 years will lose an election, a national or devolved election in Wales, and potentially also in Scotland they could come either a poor second or even third.
I mean, exactly. Labour out in Wales, Reform looking, they're making the way, and there's a lot of other big elections going on in May. And of course, we've got the budget that's going to be very tricky to get through first too. But this is the interesting thing. So I did this Morgan McSweeney. I've always found this fascinating. It's like Mandelson before him many years ago, in my day, much older than you, being touted as this great, this brilliant, strategic, clever thinker. So clever, he's had to resign from government twice, and I've been ousted the third time from a role representing our government overseas as the US ambassador. He's so brilliant and so clever. He keeps being found out for usually something questionable financially. This time it was about his big close friendship with a convicted paedophile, sex trafficker, for goodness sake. I mean, really, does this man have good judgment? Morgan McSweeney, hailed as the man, the architect of this great Labour victory. We know from the polls it wasn't a Labour victory, it was a Tory loss, and the architect of everything that goes on in Starmer's government. Well, if he's responsible for what's going on, he should be sacked on the spot. What I don't understand is why the Tories want to get rid of him. If I were them, I'd make sure he stayed in his job, because he's playing a blinder for them.
Well, look, in the book Get In, about how Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, there's one really disparaging analogy about Keir Starmer, which is that he is likened to a driver of a driverless train, the DLR in London. And that suggestion, that analogy, is that basically Morgan McSweeney has served as the political brain of Keir Starmer now for 5 years. And of course, if you remove the brain, the patient tends to end up dead. And so I think perhaps there's a sense that if they take out Morgan McSweeney, off the back of Lord Mandelson, Angela Rayner as well, make it a hat trick, then I think that they'll be thinking, Keir Starmer is a man walking wounded, and thereafter, who's going to take over? Because when I see other agendas and manifestos like Andy Burnham's, it all seems to end up we spend more money and take on the bond market.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, it'd be very popular, but again, never underestimate how much Labour voters, when Labour Party members will vote for the left-wing candidate. I mean, he has lost twice before. This would be third time running. But he lost to Ed Miliband and to Jeremy Corbyn, which tells you something. But he was known as Flip-Flop Andy when he ran last time, because he couldn't stick to any policies. And as one of our callers just pointed out, it's fine. Okay, it's like saying, well, you're the mayor of Manchester, you could become the prime minister of this country. It's like saying the guy who runs my local corner shop could run a big supermarket, run Marks and Sparks. It's a different job.
Absolutely, and I think you see it's analogous to, say, Liz Truss, for instance, who was always top of the Tory leadership tables, really considered sort of the rising thing in 2022. Yeah. She said she was going to take on the markets, and unfortunately the markets fight back. So it's easy to look good when you're the mayor, spending lots of money. When you're actually in the hot seat right now with the fiscal straitjacket they got on, I think anyone will be having a tough time right now.
Well, and there we are. We leads us nicely into the two-child benefit cap, which bizarrely Nigel Farage wants to get rid of. I still don't think he and his MPs actually understand what it is. I know Lee Anderson does. I know Lee Anderson is with me. And by the way, the majority of the public, who think it's probably not a good idea to pay around an extra $3.5 grand to every family who either don't work or are earning so little because one of them only works a couple of days a week that they can't afford the kids they've got over the two kids that you do get that extra benefit for. And they want to lift that child benefit cap. It's something that we know that Keir Starmer is being pressured under. We know that cabinet ministers are in favour of it. It's an extra £3.4 billion now, likely to cost an awful lot more if we did do it, but interestingly, largely benefits immigrant families who have 3, 4, 5 children, rather than British-born families who, what a surprise, have had to cut their cloth and can't afford to have more than 2 families and don't rely on benefits to live.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the Times, which revealed the story, said that it would cost about $3 billion extra a year, at a time, of course, when we think Rachel Reeves is trying to find between 20 to 30 billion in tax rises to pay for the next budget. So, of course, Julie, you then get the spectacle of those handouts being given to certain people at the same time as, for instance, maybe pensioners will be paying forms of taxation in different kinds of ways to get it. Or you might have, for instance, something like the family farms tax. So effectively, it's robbing one group to pay for another.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real political opening there for Kevin Baydock and the Conservatives should they choose to prosecute that case.
Absolutely. And again, even among Labour voters, it's not a majority support position because they understand exactly that this money is going to people who already can't pay their own way, and encouraging a load of people who don't work or don't work more than a couple of days a week as a family to have more kids. I'm not sure is a really strong economic future for this country. James Heal, Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator, thank you so much for joining us. Do come on again soon. Philip Ingram, I mean, just on that last policy, again, this is the territory we're in. Let's just give more money to feckless people having more kids that they can't afford.
It's ridiculous. If you can't afford it, children don't have them. There's no automatic right.
You fascist!
Yeah, there's no automatic right for people to.
We want
have
more
children.
people to have kids, but here's an idea. Maybe we should make it easier by building more houses, making housing more affordable, and making sure that women, aren't paying, for instance, people aren't paying student debt off and things like that. For people who are working hard, doing the right thing, for them to be able to settle down, buy a home and settle down and have 2 or 3 kids themselves, as opposed to lots of people waiting till their late 30s, like me, only having 1 kid. They'd love to have had more, and then we have more. I don't want a load of people who are unemployed having more kids. Sorry, I don't.
I'm not wasting billions on people who are not contributing to society.
Yeah.
Whether they're not contributing financially, whether they're not contributing by communities.
If you can't afford to feed all your kids and house all your kids, if you've got 3 or 4 or more kids, get a sodding job.
Yep.
End of. It's that simple. Yeah. Go and work every hour. God says, I don't care how many kids you want, but I'm not paying for your kids unless something terrible has happened out of the blue and then for a short period get a job. The mums as well, we've got mums at home. Well, stop being at home, go and get a job, because most mums of young children do go out to work because they have to pay the bills, and I'm fed up of having people doing the right thing and then being taxed more to pay for people who don't bother. And we'll say, they're the working poor. Yeah, if Dad is working 2 days a week and you've got 4 kids, that's a choice to be poor, and it's not one that I'm willing to subsidise. 11:49 is the time. Going to take a break. Love to hear your thoughts on that as well. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we are going to be talking about, again, another big part of the problem, the staggering number of people who feel too anxious on a Monday morning to go to work and now are claiming disability benefits. This is off the scale. We'll talk to Jamie Jenkins, who used to compile the stats at the Office for National Statistics. He's up next. This is Talk.
There are 2 real priorities for us now. The number one is the economy, and
making sure that we shrink the size of the state and public spending.
It's not the question I asked, but is Nigel Farage a threat?
And the second,
You're saying a threat to national security.
the second is defence and national security and the threat of Russia. And on both of those, I have very serious anxieties.
And Nigel Farage is a threat to national security.
I'm putting it in Diplo speak, right? I have serious anxieties.
You're a former journalist. I want it as an intro, not diplomatic waffle.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:53 is the time. And let's talk about, well, how anxious you feel. How anxious do you feel today? Because it turns out an awful lot of people feel so anxious these days that they can't go to work. 250 Brits every single day are being awarded new disability benefits for anxiety since Labour came to power 14 months ago. Disability payments in total have reached a record high, with 633,000 people in this country now claiming for both anxiety and mood disorders. Well, let's talk about this with Jamie Jenkins. He's the former head of health analysis at the Office for National Statistics. Good morning to you, Jamie.
Good morning, Julia. How are you doing?
Very well. Well, I'm quite anxious today about my taxes going on all of this, to be honest with you. I'd rather they went on more useful things like, I don't know, education or defence or police officers, maybe, things that would be useful. You worked at the ONS for a number of years and you did unemployment, you covered health stats and the like. How different a scale is this than it was back in your day?
Yeah, so I think this story really started at the COVID pandemic, really, Julia. So what we've seen, if you look at the personal independence payments overall, so there's 3.8 million people in the country claiming on PIP at the moment, and it was 2.8 million in July 2021. So it's basically gone up 1 million since that period. And if you just focus on kind of psychiatric disorders, that's gone up 50% as well. So it was around just about 993,000 back in 2021. It's gone up to 1.5 million. And what's staggering with these numbers, which is it's kind of across a lot of age groups, but you know, about 333,000 people 16 to 24 claiming these kind of benefits. What's going on, really? You know, they kind of they're already going on to a life on benefits.
Yeah, and written off, and often not written, you know, barely assessed over the phone, and then written off forever, barely ever any checks on them. This is bad for them, bad for the economy, and bad for everybody. Because it's not only that they're getting these benefits, often more than you get for if you were just on the dole, but you know, you're not working, you're not paying tax, you're not doing all the other things that keeps the economy going. But often people are saying, oh, you know, for a while they're going, oh, this is all going up because of long COVID. What, we were uniquely affected in the world with long COVID? Rubbish. And then it was like, well, as a result of lockdown, and we know lockdowns did a lot of damage. And I've got friends whose children have been irredeemably, irrevocably damaged by the impact of lockdown on them at a particularly bad time in their lives. But the scale of this and the fact that it's happening only in our country, not in all the other countries that also had lockdown, some much stricter than ours, tells us that something else is going on.
No, surely, and basically this is a continuing trend. So it's gone up a lot in the last 3 years, but as you talked about at the start there, it's going up and continuing to go up. We are normalising.
Well, the Tories getting it down before 2020, though, wasn't it on its way down again? Or had people moved from backache to stress and anxiety as these things change? Because, of course, it's impossible to know for sure if someone does have anxiety.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's the psychiatric disorders that's what's driving this increase in the numbers. Like half the increase in the overall PIP claimants have come there. And we kind of got into a point now where we're over-medicating normal life.
Yeah.
And this is costing the taxpayer. So the staggering number, if you're just not just looking on personal independence payments, but just more broadly, if you look at working age and children, the social security bill, that's £141 billion at the moment, Julia. That's a staggering amount of money.
Ow! Huge sums of money that we don't have, by the way.
No, and a huge amount of tax goes on that. And part of the problem I think you've got is two different government departments in chaos. So you've got the health system where waiting lists are record numbers. So if you have got a genuine young person or anybody who's got a mental health issue, they might go to the GP, they'll refer them. They could be stuck there for 2 years. So the solution for the government then is for the DWP then to pay them some personal independence payments, when surely it's better for that money to be spent on the health system to fix them and get them back into employment.
And there's a very, very good record for good therapists being able to do this. You need to have the more therapists. It amazes me because, again, we've got about half the young people at university apparently seem to be studying psychology. We've got a shortage of therapists, but there we are. But this is the thing, as you say, I think the key thing you got there is we're medicalising normal human emotions. So feeling anxious, feeling worried, feeling a bit down. I don't think that everybody wakes up, whatever time their alarm goes off on a Monday morning, goes, yippee, I can't wait to go to work. I've got one of the best jobs in the world. I'm well paid and I've got a great family. I haven't got any of those issues. And even I'm thinking sometimes on a Monday morning, oh God, here we go again. I mean, it's work, isn't it? There's a reason why they pay you to do it. It's not sitting on a beach in the Caribbean, eating chocolates and drinking champagne. That would be a great job, but no one will pay you to do that unless you're an influencer, I suppose. But so normal human emotion, people going, oh God, and then they're told, oh, I've got a mental health problem. You haven't got a mental health problem. You're just a human being.
No, totally. And remember, what was the kind of the social security benefit system put in place? It was a safety net for people who got on with life, and they've fallen on hard times and they've gone in. Now we've kind of normalised it. The point. Maybe, Julia, especially with these rise in the younger children, going into 16 to 24, maybe we need to start building some resilience in children in school. And maybe that's a key part of the education system, so that they're not coming out thinking, I need to go on to benefits. Get them resilient training.
You might get some knockbacks. Life's not going to be perfect. And by the way, you're not brilliant. I think maybe we need to tell a lot of kids that, unfortunately. I really do think that's part of the issue. Jamie Jenkins, thank you so much for joining us. Philip Ingram, you've got experience of this. Just having, and I'll come back to you after the midday if I haven't got enough time. What do you want to say to this?
Well, if they want anxiety, I have to get up and come in and spend all morning in the studio with you.
You love it.
And it's far better than being on a Caribbean beach eating chocolate and sipping champagne.
It's never better than that.
It's a lot better. But no, we have medicalised things that are normal life, and we just need to give people a bit of a backbone.
And you're someone you've had mental health problems. You've spoken very openly about it, which I really admire you for. But again, I think people often, there's an element where people on the mild side talk about it a bit too much. They make it their identity.
Far too much. And what that does is it takes away from those that are genuinely suffering.
Yeah. Absolutely crucial. I really appreciate that, Philip Ingram. Thank you very much. Love to hear from you and your thoughts on that. That's where your taxes are going, folks. Do give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Particularly want to hear from your thoughts on whether or not Andy Burnham would make a better Prime Minister. This is Talk.
Karate. We need to
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for joining me. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, or watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's lovely to have your company. Lots to talk about in this hour. And if you have missed anything of the show, or you have to go out, I mean, maybe you've got a life and you have to go out and you can't listen, you can go to my YouTube page. You never have to miss a thing. The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show is what we called it. You've got no excuse for not subscribing, and so you can find out what we've been talking about. Coming up, we are going to be talking about Boris Johnson unleashing a blistering attack on Nigel Farage, branding him a threat to Britain's economy and national security. In an interview with The Sun, he said he had serious anxieties about Reform UK's stance on Russia in particular. Certainly something I've taken Richard Tice and Nigel Farage to task with many times. Meanwhile, President Zelensky has warned that the world is in the most destructive arms race in history. The Ukrainian leader told the UN General Assembly yesterday that President Putin would drive his war of aggression wider and deeper unless he was stopped. And a family of three, including a small child, have become the first asylum seekers to come to Britain under Keir Starmer's one-in, one-out exchange scheme with France. This was announced by the Home Office. They've been flown in on a commercial flight paid for by you and me. And, very exciting breaking news. Another two people have been deported to France. Oh, yay. I mean, well done, everybody. I mean, we are talking about a total of 6 people going across in 2 weeks. I mean, the government is hailing this as a success. We are an absolute joke of a country. We really are. Meanwhile, cash raised from speeding fines should be handed to the police so they can use it to catch more law-breaking drivers. Who's saying that? Well, 35 chief constables, policing and local transport chiefs have all written to the ministers urging the Chancellor Rachel Reeves to give them the £100 million that Treasury pockets annually from speed cameras, saying they'll do more good with it. But would they? Would they not just all put on their, spend it on pride laces and then go attend the Notting Hill Carnival or whatever it is they do, rather than actually policing our streets? Anyway, we'll talk about all of that, plenty more besides. Also still lots of calls coming in, whether it's on migration, other issues, or indeed Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, very much in the news, looking like he's setting himself up to challenge Keir Starmer for the Labour leadership. But would he make a better Prime Minister? Well, tell us your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Philip Ingram is still with me. Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Philip, just first for your reaction to the fact that we've sent another 2 people over to France. Shall we? I mean, sorry, I know, have we got any of those little confetti poppers? Can someone go out and buy some champagne? We've now sent 6 people over. We've got 3 back, more to come. It's an Afghan and a Somali, both entered the country illegally. No right to claim asylum, successfully removed to France under the deal struck in the summer. So, yeah, a total of 6. Well done, everybody.
That's wonderful.
Well done.
That's wonderful. It is a start.
Oh, I mean...
OK.
32,000 have come
pathetic.
since January the 1st.
Yeah.
32,000.
Yeah.
32,000.
Yeah. There's been about 1,000 this week. And coming in, it's ridiculous.
It's an absolute joke. It's just an absolute joke. I mean,
joke.
I say we are not a serious country. Let me talk about something that's definitely your area of expertise, and that is foreign affairs, defence affairs. As a former senior military intelligence officer, we've got President Zelensky at his UN speech yesterday talking about how dangerous President Putin was. His war of aggression, he says, will be driven wider and deeper unless he is stopped. We've seen the incursion into NATO airspace and a little bit of wagging fingers from NATO. Donald Trump said very clearly at the UN yesterday, when speaking to reporters outside, we should shoot down Russian fighters. When Russian fighter jets travelled from Syria over the Turkish border during the Syrian civil war, which Russia was, again, never been on the right side of any war in terms of good and bad, Turkish authorities just shot them down like that. Never did it again. We're on, I think, the 3rd incursion by Russian jets.
Oh, more than that. There's overnight there have been more incursions by drones over Copenhagen and elsewhere coming off coming off Russian commercial ships by the looks of of things. The analysis that's there, the Germans did similar analysis whenever there were drone incursions over some of their more sensitive sites and found that they were coming from commercial ships that just happened to be under Russian control, deliberately disrupting. So we've got them disrupting with drones, we've got them flying Shahad drones with explosives in them over Poland, we've got them flying MiG-31s north of Estonia, we've got cyber attacks, we've got the Russians attacking us on a daily basis, and all we do is we call another NATO Article 4, which is a collective stiff letter and finger waggling from all NATO members. No more substance to it than that. We need to start taking substantive action, otherwise Putin is just going to keep doing it. He's testing us.
He's testing us. But what is he hoping to discover from doing it? That we're not going to do anything? And then what does he do? He sends 10 jets, then he sends 100. What's he going to do? What's the purpose of it? And the cyber attacks, that's just testing out what a reaction is and what we can do about it.
It is. It's gathering intelligence so we can see what our reaction time is militarily. He can see what our reaction time is in protecting our critical national infrastructure. He can see what our political reaction time is. He can see the different statements that are coming out from different political leaders and work out where the differences are in them, and then find ways of making those differences even bigger. This is manna from heaven for Vladimir Putin.
We are totally and utterly in deep doo-doo, aren't we? We really are. Thank
beginning
you.
Beginning with an F.
Really trying to find a word there. Look, let's talk to another guest about this now, Sean Pinner. He's a former British soldier. He also served as a Marine in the Ukrainian army, and it was, in fact, during the siege of Mariupol, captured by Russian forces and later released in a prisoner exchange. And he joins us right now from Dnipro in Ukraine. Very good afternoon to you, Sean.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we had some, extraordinary words from Donald Trump at the UN earlier this week. Lots of extraordinary words about a lot of topics, but actually after he got off the stage, after an hour-long speech at the UN, he was talking about how, in very different terms about Ukraine and Russia, not only about NATO should shoot down Russian jets that made incursions into NATO airspace, but also about how Ukraine should seek to take back its own land and more, and how disappointed he was in Vladimir Putin in terms of someone he could deal with. But also yesterday we had Zelensky's speech as well at the UN, delivered in English to make sure he got the widest audience, I think, and where he warned that Russian aggression is not going to end in Ukraine. What's your response to what both of those men had to say?
I'm still sceptical, really, about Trump. We've heard this all before, so I take with what he says with a pinch of salt, and really actions, really looking at the actions rather than the speech. We've heard this for 3 years in Ukraine, so Europe's been slow to act. I don't want to sit there and America bash, but Europe's been slow to act too, and we keep hearing this. So I think the one of the things we've taken from it is that Ukraine really has to and has been domestically producing its own weapons, and it can only rely upon itself and support from allies to defend its sovereignty and freedom.
This is the thing. There's no talk at all of Donald Trump giving more weapons at all to the Ukrainians. He's selling weapons to European allies within NATO who are then giving it on to the Ukrainians, but he's not giving any, and he's not blocking the sale, which he could easily do. And there was some threats, some worries that he was going to do that. So there has been a softening. But at the end of the day, he's always said, look, this is Biden's war. It's not his war. And we know that his MAGA base will certainly be very unhappy if there were huge sums being spent on helping Ukraine. But do you think that the Europeans will step up? Because they talk a good game. There's a lot of hugging. There's a lot of rolling out the red carpet. Oh, come and see the king. There's all that goes on. But at the end of the day, it's Ukrainian blood being spilt, and there's some brave souls like yourself, Brits and others, who've gone over to fight for them. But at the end of the day, unless we are willing to stump up serious amounts of armaments, Ukraine can't win this war.
We need support, that's for sure. We've proven over the last 3 years we can take back ground. We're doing it now in areas counteroffensive in Pokrovsk. We're watching the economy in Russia quite closely. The hits on the oil refineries have been devastating. So, and then you have Operation Spiderweb, where the Ukrainians took out 1/3 of tactical bombers. So, we've pushed the Russians out of the Black Sea. They don't have dominance of the Black Sea anymore. So, we're proven. It will be Ukrainians that will be teaching other armies about fighting the Russians, in the future. But we still need support and money. and help. And there is this myth that, you know, America's not helping us. No, they are. I work with and talk to NATO troops. They do great work with the injured, and there are American charities. A lot of my friends are actually Republicans who support Ukraine. So, you know, there's a huge support in America, and it's really sort of what I do now is push that, against the Russian narratives, and try and push that story to America and places like that. Because I'm probably one of the, in America, one of the only Ukrainian soldiers they're probably going to have spoke to. So it's really important to get that message across to them in the States.
Well, absolutely, and all credit to you doing that. What do you make of Boris Johnson, his latest intervention in an interview with The Sun? He has talked about how Nigel Farage, the Reform leader here, is a threat to our national security. He's emboldening Putin, and it's extremely dangerous. I've certainly sort of taken on Nigel Farage and his deputy Richard Tice over their attitudes towards Ukraine, and there has seemed to have been a sort of a more... I mean, there's no doubt at all that Nigel Farage holds no candle for Vladimir Putin, but more of a sort of and we've seen this from the right wing in America as well, a sort of Ukraine's not our problem sort of attitude.
Well, it's difficult. It is our problem. I mean, you've got to remember he's already attacked the UK with, chemical weapons, and he's brought the war to Europe. He is marching west. It is our problem. As regards to Farage, I mean, he seems to copy Trump in a lot of ways. If Trump changes his mind, maybe Farage will change his mind. It's deeply concerning to listen to him, project Putin as this great leader to his own people. This is a guy that, invaded Ukraine and set up Nazi-style filtration camps and has committed some of the worst atrocities in Ukraine. He may not agree with the war, but, if you're going to sit there and say, Putin's a great leader, you're accepting the fact that he's committing war crimes.
No, I think what he's saying, I mean, in Farage's defence of this, and I say I've tackled him on it, on air and off air, is he was saying, as a leader, he runs rings round the West. And he does. I mean, he does. That's a simple matter of fact. He does.
Yeah, he does. He does. I think that's slightly changing now. You're seeing a lot of heated rhetoric especially this week, with the Polish foreign minister, who's now looking to take down aircraft and drones and if they go into NATO airspace, which is long overdue, to be fair.
Well, this is the thing. We've seen a very different attitude when it comes to defence spending and their hardening of attitudes. Countries like Poland, like the Baltic states, like Finland, where they are, they are much clearer about the threat from Russia, all of which because they are on the border to Russia, but also they've been ruled by, Russian, Soviet governments before. They know what the reality is. Do you think that Western governments, although they talk a good game in France and Britain and elsewhere, they don't really get how big this threat is? And this is something Zelensky is trying to get across. It's me now. It's my country now. It's Moldova. It's Belarus, and they're a vassal state anyway. It's Poland. It's the Baltic states. It's Finland. He's coming for all of you.
It is. I mean, I've been advocate saying that if he takes Ukraine, he's forcibly mobilising all the fighting age males in Ukraine. He'll then turn those on to NATO, all those marvellous, technical battlefield advances you're seeing on the news, and now become Russian, and now put Russia in one of the most strongest armies on the planet with, 2 or 3 years of fighting in Ukraine in modern day war. That's going to put them straight into NATO, and more risk of Article 5 moments. It's going to push them onto the borders of Poland. And when I was in captivity, they kept telling me they're going to go after Poland. Poland would be next. I personally think they'll go after Moldova, join up with Transnistria, and then they're into Moldova. It's going to keep rolling on. Putin needs to be beaten in Ukraine, and we need to get the support for Ukraine to keep their sovereignty and freedom.
I know, and there's this idea that you could let Vladimir Putin keep Crimea, keep the Donbass, and then he'll just go away quietly. I mean, it's almost like these people have never read a history book, but there we are. Really good to talk to you. Thank you so much, Sean Pinner, former British soldier and Ukrainian Marine. Thank you so much. Philip Ingram, I'm sure, as a former senior military intelligence officer, you want to come back in on all of that.
Yeah, Sean's exactly right. Putin will go for Moldova next, and Transnistria in particular, which is the Russian breakaway part of Moldova. What came out in that is, and Sean didn't quite mention, is the Ukrainians are stepping up hugely when it comes to their own domestic manufacturing of military capability.
Drones in particular.
Drones
that has been the big revelation of this war.
And their cruise missiles. And the one thing that's holding them back is a lack of money. Their manufacturing capacity isn't at full tilt at the minute because it doesn't have the money to get all the components that it needs to get in. That's where Europe can provide a lot of support.
And people will say, well, hold on a minute, why are we funding that war? What do you say to that? Why, no, we've got problems of our own.
Because those problems will spill over into our own countries, and the very, very small amount of money that it's costing us would turn into huge amounts of money when Putin comes further.
I don't know why we haven't just taken all those frozen Russian assets and just handed them over. Off you go. And people go, well, there's corruption in Ukraine. All countries have corruption at this level. All, particularly former Soviet Union countries. If you lived under socialism, corruption is the only way to function and to get ahead. So it's no worse there than anywhere.
Exactly, and we're seeing Europe starting to come together, but it's so slow from a political perspective, and this is why decisions aren't being made to give lots of weapons and to seize the Russian assets and give those to Ukraine and everything else.
But also, we've still got a load of Western nations in Europe still buying Russian oil and gas.
Exactly, and Donald Trump's exploiting that to do even less. And that's the trouble.
Yeah, but Donald Trump's making a lot of fair points.
He's making some very fair points about it, but he's not only is he making fair points, but he's using it as an excuse. He should say, you have to stop this by this date, and we're going to up our level of support. I wish Donald Trump would give more funding, and I wish he would, and I don't think it's just a European war, but I also completely understand they're going to have to save their resources for China and Taiwan. Very much so.
They've got other interests. This is a transcontinental country having to deal with this. Europe should be able to defend their own territory, and the fact that we can't, I think, is a bit of a giveaway that we have lost that battle. Can I just get to you some other breaking news? It emerged a little bit earlier that Nicolas Sarkozy, the former French president, has been found guilty in a case involving criminal conspiracy, in which he's conspiracy in a case related to taking millions of euros of illicit funds from the late Libyan leader Colonel Muammar Gaddafi. Paris Criminal Court acquitted him of all other charges, including passive corruption and illegal campaign finances, but he has been found guilty of the criminal conspiracy. He has just been, in the last few moments, sentenced to 5 years in prison and ordered by the court to be taken straight into custody. Bearing in mind, he's a wealthy man. He's married to Carla Bruni, a very wealthy woman from a wealthy family. Lovely house in the south of France, being close to it, not in it, obviously. The thing is, we've got to be honest with you, it is the norm that former presidents of France are found guilty of some sort of, I don't want to libel them all, but I'm pretty sure I don't think I can think of one who has not faced some sort of criminal charges involving something to do with money after leaving office, sometimes during the time they're in office.
Yeah, clearly he didn't set the conditions to stop him from going from living in the French palaces to a palatial cell. Which your French president
will
seemed
indeed.
to do.
Well, Sarkozy claimed the case was politically motivated. He was accused of using the funds from Gaddafi to finance his 2007 election campaign. He was president of France until 2012.
Did he donate any to the Labour Party?
Behave. But the prosecution alleged that he promised to help Gaddafi combat his reputation as a pariah with Western countries. Mind you, Tony Blair was happy to work with that, shaking hands with him in the desert and all
exactly.
that. That said, think about Gaddafi, terrible, awful, terrible, ghastly human being, committed awful crimes, but nevertheless he did keep on top of the lunatic Islamic ideologues in his country,
in the same way Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
Yeah, exactly. That's you choose your enemy. But yet another French president dealing with that. Also, another story that's been emerging this morning, and this is about FIFA discussing a ban on Israel from international football ahead of the 2026 World Cup. We'll let a load of other countries join, but the world and European governing bodies were urged this week by United Nations advisory experts, so the usual captured thoughts, to suspend all Israeli teams over the war in Gaza. Trump administration apparently working very hard to prevent that. I would have thought that they would do an awful lot of work, would they not, to be making it very, very hard financially for FIFA to operate, because they all desperately want that American market and the American sponsors, don't they? Let's face it, FIFA's about money, not football.
Well, exactly.
We know that. But again, this absolute outrage. We've seen this over the Eurovision Song Contest. Whether Israel should be banned. Ireland going, well, if Israel are in, then we won't be in. Oh, sod off! You're not going to win. Your last few people were absolutely terrible. I have to say, if Israel's not in it, I won't watch it then. I mean, it's just, even the BBC sort of umming and ahhing about it. This, this whole sort of, banning of Israelis who've got nothing whatsoever to do with the Israeli policy in the war. But by the way, also, we don't seem to do the same thing with any other country that is involved in a war. There is not genocide in Gaza. Simple fact, there is not. This is no different to any other war in terms of actually, the death rate, other than the fact that the civilian, the non-combatant death rate is actually far lower than in any war that any Western country. And anyway, it's actually irrelevant to whether or not this is a just war or not. Every Western country, if they had faced what they faced on October the 7th 2 years ago, would have done exactly the same and probably more. I find it extraordinary. I think this is very, very sinister. Just as we are in 1930s territories with Vladimir Putin, in terms of just the Sudetenland then. Just Czechoslovakia. No, I'm sorry, guys, wake up to the threat from Putin, but also wake up to the threat in terms of the anti-Israeli agenda that is going across the world, that is being pushed. There is more behind this. It is very, very, very sinister, and it needs to be fought against.
The Iranians behind it, Putin's behind it. The Israelis have lost the information domain. They don't help themselves with what they're doing in the West Bank, and they need to wake up to that and sort that out, because then a lot of this would start to go away.
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. I don't think it would.
But Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, has got it right. We're not going to recognise a Palestinian state. We're not going to do any negotiations until the hostages
Hamas lay down their
arms and everything
and they
else.
accept the right of Israel to exist.
Yeah, exactly. Get rid of the.
It's almost like she actually knows what she's talking about, as opposed to our Prime Minister and Macron and Marconi going, Palestinian state, raise your flag.
Raise the flag.
But by the way, Hamas, would you mind awfully bringing the hostages back?
And we're getting the mainstream media now turning around and saying officials in Gaza have said there have been X number of casualties. The Israelis have caused X number of people to be killed overnight. No, it's not officials in Gaza. It's Hamas. And people need to start calling it out as it is. We need to get rid of the flurry language and call it out.
We really try here, but I feel like we are a voice sort of drowning in an ocean of lies. And the BBC, I think, are the major. I don't believe for a nanosecond that the war reporters and the senior correspondents and editors at the BBC don't know that what they're doing is a lie. It is a lie. Sue me. I mean, seriously, what you're doing is a lie. You're perpetrating a lie on the British people.
The groupthink that's in the newsrooms in
genuinely terrifying.
BBC, Sky, and elsewhere is terrifying, because they do believe what it is that they're reporting.
But they couldn't possibly. But again, it's like all these mass shootings of people, and they go and get aid from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and yet there's never been. They report them as if they're fact.
There's never been any pictures.
No one. 1.5 million mobile phones, never captured one. Not one. Come on, give me a break. So much of what you're seeing in Gaza is staged. It's a lie. People in Gaza are facing a terrible time, and yes, people are dying, children included. Yeah, that's called war, folks. I hate to tell you, and I'm really sorry that anyone is dying, but there's a really simple solution. Hand back the hostages, Hamas lays down their arms, accept the right of Israel to exist, and it goes away like that. It goes away like that.
I've been throwing the same challenge out for well over a year, suggesting that people should try and find a video of a Hamas fighter being taken into the destroyed hospitals. They're all working hospitals.
23,000, we believe, have died. By the way, all the hospitals were destroyed.
Yes.
And now all the hospitals are not destroyed, but they're looking after people. I can't.
But then they get destroyed again. Each hospital's been rubbelised. I think the Americans say half a dozen times.
I genuinely, people go, you're Israel shill. I mean, I'm not. It's the same as Ukraine.
We're not allowing ourselves to be played by
I don't believe any government saying. I don't believe my own government when it says things. This is just really simple. This is about black and white. It's about good and evil, and it's about facts. And I don't know how anybody who can understand any of those concepts and know anything at all about this war could be taking any other side.
But they are.
And they are. And they are. And they're people who think they're good people. And I'm sorry, a lot of those people in the 1930s would have been on the wrong side as well. And I'm really serious. We are in 1930s territories for Israel, for Jewish people in this country and across the West, and for the Western world, our civilization, and what we understand by right and wrong, and what we will do to protect right and to tackle wrong. And whether that's Putin, whether that Islamic ideology, whether it's the Hamas forces, whether it's China, we have got to wake up and step up. And yet I'm going to keep banging on about it, because I'm just hoping that one extra person every day understands and takes it on board.
I've got over 40 years of experience in conflicts and analysing conflicts and been there, done it, got the T-shirt, the badges and everything else, and I cannot understand why people are getting their analysis of what's going on in Gaza so badly wrong.
Unless it's deliberate.
Well, it is being... people are falling for disinformation deliberately fired at them, and they're too naive to sit up and go,
But I don't think BBC war correspondents are too naive.
No, they're not.
So why are they pushing that? Why are they pushing that?
And we're paying their salaries, and therefore we should be questioning that.
Yeah. 12:27 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Going to go to your calls on Andy Burnham. Would he make a good Prime Minister? We're also going to talk about whether or not we do or we don't have a mental health crisis in this country, with hundreds of thousands of people claiming they're too anxious to go to work. So you and I are paying for them. Plenty more coming up. This is Talk.
Mirror, Signal, Drive, Talk. Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Let's get straight to your phone calls. So 344 499 1000 is the number to have your say. Graham is in Staffordshire. Graham, good afternoon to you. You want to talk about Andy Burnham. Do you think he'd make a better PM than Keir Starmer?
No, I don't. It's absolute rubbish, quite honestly. He can't even solve a bus strike that took place in Manchester. BBC don't report that. Sky don't report it. Neither do any other rubbish programmes that we have to. Thank God we got Talk TV.
God bless you. Well, thank we got sensible callers like you.
I thought what you said earlier on was fantastic, by the way.
Oh, what were we talking about? Did we accidentally say something sensible?
You're talking about the French locking up a former president.
Well, they generally do, don't they?
Yeah, we should start locking up somebody like Starmer, Hermer, Blair, and half the bloody cabinet.
Well, no,
basically.
only if they convicted of a crime. I'm not in favour of doing pretending we're an African, dictatorship.
Well, I'd most certainly have Blair, because Blair, quite honestly, is an absolute disgrace. Anyway, by the way, the other thing about Andy Burnham is this: you want to do a Google search for what happened at Stafford General Hospital when Burnham was a cabinet minister in Blair's government.
Of course, we had a very big scandal, didn't we?
Oh, yes, it was, but nobody mentions that. There's no mention about that. As far as I'm concerned, Burnham, quite honestly, well, he's got as much knowledge of economics and simple maths as Diane Abbott. I mean, quite honestly, Burnham couldn't run a bath, basically. Man's a total drip.
I'll tell you what, I love a good bit of being married to a man from Staffordshire, a good bit of Staffordshire plain talking. That's what we like, Graham. Thank you very much. Mark's on the line in South Wales. Mark, what do you want to talk about?
Hi, it's about this mental health crisis and benefits, or rather the lack of it.
Yeah.
We don't have a mental health issue in this country. What we've got is the wrong sort of economy. We've got people coming out of school who traditionally would have worked with their hands, or they have the patience and mindset to do quite a boring, repetitive job on an assembly line or what have you. And there's nothing there for them. They're coming out of school. Those jobs have disappeared because we've run our economy down to become a service economy and no industrialisation. Now, if you're stuck in that position and you're only getting £72 on a week universal credit, and someone comes up to you and says, here, if you go to your doctor and get a certificate for anxiety, they can't prove it either way, and then get assessed as having anxiety, you get an extra £400 a month.
Yeah, I mean, and no one will bother you again for years. I mean, it's completely irrational. This is the thing. I always think that sort of the middle class sort of hand wringers, they always think that people who are, the bottom end of the social economic ladder, that they don't make rational decisions. Yes, they do. That is a rational decision if you're in that position.
Absolutely. We need to get rid of the net zero, bring the costs down, and if the government are going to borrow, they need to borrow to invest to try and get us making things again.
Yeah.
The only way we're going to bring the benefits bill down in the long term is to get people into work.
Yeah, and we'll need lower energy costs for that, and we need to have skills for that. We need to get particularly all these young men. Let's get them building homes that people desperately want to buy. I mean, work that's actually very rewarding. It's actually pretty well paid as well, and you'd feel you'd done something useful for your day. One of the worst things for depression or anxiety is doing nothing all day.
Yeah, but as I say, a lot of people, they haven't got depression or anxiety. They're just making a rational decision to get as much money as they can on their claim.
I'll tell you what, come the revolution when I'm in charge, Mark, there's going to be an awful lot of workfare, and it's going to start very early in the morning.
Hey, if you can get the jobs there for people, they will want to do them. Because the problem is, as soon as they're on this sickness benefit, they get this extra £400 a month, and they're even more trapped on benefits.
Yeah, because you're never going to. Why would you take a job that pays less? Here's the thing: I do think there are also an awful lot of people who think you're a mug for going to work. Bearing in mind, if you've got low skills and you're a bit, frankly, you've got hopeless parents, you haven't instilled a work ethic. I think one of the number one things parents should instill in their kids, as part of your job as a parent, that you're thinking, well, I'm going to be on a minimum wage the rest of my life. I don't like my supervisor. I don't want to do this godforsaken job. We've all done those jobs, but this is it for the rest of my life. I would rather not work, even if I'm even 20 quid a week worse off. I'd still rather not work. I mean, the point is, well, sorry, that's not an option.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but I can absolutely understand where people are coming from. Yep. And there's the other set of group of people as well. When you and I left school with our own levels or A-levels or went to university, people who weren't university material, they used to go and work in the local council,
plenty of jobs,
insurance office, a clerical job. But because of the qualification inflation, because we're sending 50% of young people to university, now those firms all to cut down on the sheer number of applications. You now need a degree for those jobs.
Yeah, for jobs. I mean, you didn't need a degree to get a job in McDonald's these days. You're quite right, Mark. Very wise. Have a word with the Department for Work and Pensions. Thank you very much indeed, Mark, for that. Going to take a quick break. Up next, we're going to be talking to Reform London Assembly member Alex Wilson about all things migration and reform. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:38 is the time. Philip Ingram is still with us, but we're joined right now by Alex Wilson. He's a London Assembly member for Reform UK. A very good afternoon to you, Alex.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Hello, thank you very much for joining us. Can I just ask you first about the really important stories in town? Does your party leader genuinely think that migrants are stealing and eating swans or not?
Well, there have been clips on social media showing exactly that kind of thing going on.
Yeah, they're about 5 years old, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know how widespread it is.
Why is he talking about this stuff?
Story. Well, he gets asked questions, he has to answer them. But I think really, we'd all like to just concentrate on talking about what really matters, which is getting on top of immigration, sorting out the economy, and trying to restore some confidence in our public services.
Well, let's try and do that. That would be all of those things would be great, wouldn't they? We've learned this morning in the last hour or so that now we've got a full total of 6 migrants who have been deported to France. We've had 3 apparently legitimate asylum seekers, a family including a small child, arriving. Do you hail that as good news?
Well, only 30,000 to go then this year, from what we've had across the channel so far.
Well, 31,994.
Yeah, it's a drop in the ocean. I guess you have to give some credit for them appearing to try, but realistically, we have a small boats crisis. We've known about that for a great many years now, and we've had more, 50% more crossing this year than at this point previously, and a one-in, one-out scheme that only affects half a dozen people here or there is not going to be the answer to tackling that process. We've got to be bold. We've got to be ambitious. Lots of things that need fixing the country need a great degree of ambition, and top of that list is sorting out the small boats crisis. And it means having the courage to leave the ECHR and other associated legal constraints that prevent us doing this. So we've had 3 that have gone back so far. As I say, there's another 31,000 to go. Or 6. Sorry, 6.
Yeah, that's what I said. 6. I mean, look, there's no doubt at all. Reform has come up with some very ambitious plans, not just involving deportations of illegal migrants, but legal migrants as well. I'm 4 square behind an awful lot of them. What do you make of, though, the cases where we've got, for instance, an Afghan arrival who came on a dinghy in 2022? He filmed his whole journey through Europe. He went through plenty of safe countries before he decided to come here. He filmed himself, many monuments in London, say, look, here I am. Very big on social media, apparently. And then he was offered asylum, granted asylum on the basis it was too dangerous for him to return to his home country of Afghanistan. And yet, bizarrely, in 2024, he went off there for 8 weeks. Don't know how he afforded the flight or I'm assuming he was working. Surely, if he was working, getting 8 weeks holiday in one go. I mean, even I don't manage 8 weeks holiday a year. I mean, he was able to go back there for 8 weeks, filmed himself there, came back. Home Office did nothing, said nothing. He's still here. It's only because it's been on the front page of the Sun newspaper. They may well be looking into it. What do you make of stories like that? He won't be the only one, by the way.
Right, well done for the Sun newspaper to highlight it. And as you're right, it won't be the only one, and it needs to be looked at very closely. Because if you fled somewhere claiming that you're fleeing war and persecution, that it's unsafe for you to be in your home country, and then you accept the generosity of the British taxpayer in putting you up, for then to fly back and have an 8-week jolly is really kind of throwing that straight back in our faces, and it's unacceptable. I think if cases like that come to light, then they shouldn't be granted asylum. If they've had asylum already granted, I don't know if it's possible to rescind it. If it is,
if it isn't possible to rescind it, it should be possible to rescind it.
Then we need to change the law, don't we?
Yeah.
It is taking the mick, and because you and I, we work hard, we pay our taxes. As a country, we are generous and tolerant and welcoming to those in genuine need. But if you're able to fly back for 8 weeks and have a lovely holiday there, clearly you're not fleeing war and persecution. You're not in fear of your life. And therefore, the basis on which your asylum has been granted was clearly fraudulent, and it's got to go.
Yeah, again, it is just an absolute joke. But also, we've got things like revelations this week. And again, interestingly, came from a BBC report. That just shows how much times have changed and the Overton window has shifted. The BBC did a report into asylum seekers in illegal migrants in a migrant hotel being able to take a £600 round trip to go and visit a GP or a doctor that they'd seen some months ago where they lived somewhere else. All paid for by reclaimed by the Home Office. No, No, you and me as taxpayers. We now found out that Sir Keir Starmer's local council, Camden Council, it's also my council, has offered free haircuts to asylum seekers. They're getting access above and beyond British people to GPs, to hospital appointments, to free taxi services, to, discount this, discount that. Where does it end?
Well, this is London Borough of Camden, which has set itself up as being a borough of sanctuary, and what that means is that they are throwing all sorts of money at various different things to make these people feel welcome, over and above what any British taxpayer would be entitled or expecting to receive from the state. And you're right, there's no such thing as Home Office money, government money. It's all taxpayers' money, one way or the other. It's you and me that are paying for it, and it's just not acceptable. It is why people are so angry. So we've always been a welcoming, tolerant country for people who are in genuine need of help and support. But what we are not prepared to do is to give things to people who many of whom have no right to be here.
Well, even if they do, I don't know why they can't pay for their own haircuts like everyone else does. But here's the thing. The government, as we understand, is paying £2,000 to criminals, illegal migrants who they deport, back to Romania and places like that. But your party is saying as part of your deportation plans, you would deport people and give them money as well. So why are we paying people?
Well, the thing the government's talking about is about foreign offenders, and clearly, giving them £2,000 to relocate is cheaper than giving the cost of keeping them in prison for a year, which is I think over 50,000 a year equivalent. So you can see why there's a calculation to be made there. But the optics are shocking. We should be deporting foreign criminals as a matter of course anyway. And the government scheme doesn't actually cover the three countries where the largest proportion of foreign offenders are in our jails, which are Albania, Poland, and Romania. 12% of the current prison population are overseas born, and it's about 10,000 plus prison places. We have a prison places crisis. Everything's in crisis. The NHS, migration, prisons, and we could very well do with those 10,000 prison places, so we can lock up people who should be locked up for knife crime or sexual offences, all those things, or
maybe people who slash people with a knife and are convicted of it, who are burning a Koran when they've said I'm going to kill you, and who don't face a single day behind bars.
But burning a religious book is not something particularly edifying. It's not something I would ever do. It's not something I would ever recommend anyone to do. But if someone's response to that is to attack you with a knife, waving it around, saying, I am going to kill you, that is clearly a heinous act of violence that deserves to be punished by a prison sentence, not a suspended sentence.
Just finally, really quickly, Andy Burnham is being touted as the king over the water, the mayor of Greater Manchester, but he's saying, if people want me, I'll try and come back as an MP and become the alternative Labour leader. He'd have to get a by-election victory, a selection and then a victory before he could be an MP. How do you fancy Reform's chances against him?
Well, if he was to stand in a by-election, we would throw absolutely everything at it to make sure that Reform won that by-election, and then the question doesn't appear. But whoever the Labour leader is, whether that's now or in 12 months' time or at the next election in 2 or 3 years' time, we're fighting to win. This government is a disaster. Obviously, Starmer's the figurehead for that being a disaster, but fundamentally, it's the Labour Party. And it's a Labour Party that is made up of people who've got no experience of running business, taking risks, employing people, sacking people, trying to make sure that things are delivered, with value and common sense. And so, whoever's in charge of the Labour Party, they'll continue to be a shambles, and that's why we need to beat them in 2019.
Alex Wilson, 2019. Go back sometime. Alex Wilson, for Reform UK London Assembly member. Thank you very much, indeed. Philip Ingram, he's a spirited defence of reform, a spirited attack. I think a lot of our audience have been nodding along to an awful lot of what we were saying on the migrant policy. Do you trust that anybody's going to deal with this?
I don't think anyone's going to deal with it properly at all.
Reform's got the best chance. At least they've been consistent on this for years. They're not just saying it because it'd be popular. We know this is stuff they believe. They were saying it when it wasn't popular.
They have, but what they need to do is start to get into the credibility game, and this is putting some substance behind the sound bites that they're putting out. It's great to put all the cries out. It's great to make all these calls because they're populist and everything else, but you need to come up with a plan for delivery. If anyone does that and they run up to the next election, they'll be the first government in waiting to do that.
Yeah. Oh, he's not optimistic. 12:47 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about why the police are saying, can we please have the speed camera cash, the £100 million that is raised every year from people being basically like, let's face it, flashed and then having to pay that fine, because it all goes to Treasury coffers at the moment. Police reckon they could do more with it themselves to deal with crime. Should that money be handed over? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram still with me as well. Let's talk about speed cameras. Philip Ingram, any speeding fines in recent months or years?
In recent months or years, no. I've got 0 points on my license.
Well played to you.
Don't ask me about the past.
Oh, okay, right. But a lot of people do get those speeding fines, and you pay them, and often it's 120 quid or 60 or whatever it is if you pay it very quickly. And people pay those fines. Well, where does that money go? Well, it turns out it goes straight to Treasury coffers. Doesn't go to the police, doesn't go to the local council, goes to the Treasury. But now a large number of chief constables, 35 of them, and policing and local transport chiefs have written to cabinet ministers and basically said, can the money be given to the police so that we can use that to actually police our roads rather than it going to Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor? Well, let's talk about this with Danny Shaw. He's a policing, crime and justice commentator. A very good afternoon to you, Danny.
Hello, Julia. Hi.
Thanks for joining us. I think a lot of us would probably be surprised that that money doesn't go to the local police or the local council. Because certainly, if you get a fine for overstaying your parking meter, that goes to the local council, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is a surprise, and I think that the police have got a really good case to make. That they should recoup that money, and that money should be reinvested in policing. And certainly making our streets safer. Where I would question is whether we want more speed cameras.
There is that.
That's the issue. I should declare an interest, having been caught several times. I don't have any points, but I have been caught, and I have done speed awareness courses rather than getting points. So I do declare an interest in that. But I do think there's 8,000 cameras across the UK. Yeah. That seems like enough. And at a time when we are complaining that the police are not following up reports of shoplifting, reports of mobile phone theft, reports of car theft, when there's footage available, and that, we hear the stories all the time. I've got the footage, I'm sending the police the footage, and they don't follow it up. To be asking for more speed cameras seems to be the wrong
and asking for the cash for it. But this is the thing as well. I mean, certainly, where I live, we've got, a massive big thoroughfare. It's a red route into London, and it's at 20 mile per hour. That's got about 10 speed cameras along it, and it must be the biggest money maker, because you're constantly braking to not go over 20 on that stretch of road. And I have to say, I think it's absurd. Everyone knows it's a money. Kids are not crossing that road on the school run and getting run over. This is a money-making exercise, but it's not making money for the local council or for the local police. I suppose an awful lot of us also just feel, even if you gave the police, 10 times as much money, they still wouldn't put it into the right priorities, because again and again they say, we can't come to your shoplifting or your bag theft or whatever it is because we're busy dealing with other crimes. Well, what are the other crimes? Because we know that the people who are doing a lot of those prolific crimes, they are very prolific, and lots of evidence in this country that you can arrest a very small number of people and basically get rid of about 50% of crime.
That's absolutely right. Look, I think where the government has a role to play here is it can say to the police, OK, you want this money back, we will create a fund that money will go into, that will address those specific issues that we believe are priorities not being addressed. For example, tackling shoplifting, if you feel that's a priority, or knife crime, or whatever it is. So that's what the Home Office should be doing. They should be leaning into that. They should be saying to Treasury, we'll take that money and we will set up a fund directly for that. £100 million could go quite a long way in those police force areas. We need a bit more intervention, I think, to direct the police to go in those right areas. I would just say, I do disagree with you about the 20 mile. Look, it's a real pain as a driver. It is an absolute pain to have to drive at 20 miles an hour, particularly on roads that, are pretty quiet. Yeah. But the evidence is that actually it does save lives.
It does save lives. I've got no issue with local side street, residential streets, certainly streets around schools, especially those school hours. absolutely no issue at all driving at 20 miles per hour. I do think on what is effectively a dual carriageway, a major thoroughfare in and out of a capital city, I think it's absolute joke to say that people should be driving at 20. I'm sorry, I do. And I think we have a trade-off in life between, you know, safety and you know, here's the thing. Teach your kids how to cross the roads without having their mobile phones in their hands and up to their faces. That will save more lives, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, and if we had some police officers on the streets who were actually stopping motorists, certainly.
The ones on their phones. I've literally passed by somebody that almost like didn't stop at a red light, and they literally got their phone like this. I'm like, put your phone down. You're driving a big metal box while children are on the way to school. They look, police won't do anything. Danny Shaw, thank you so much for joining us. Police and crime and justice commentator joining us there. Philip Ingram, were you surprised to learn that this money didn't go to either the local council or the local police, and it goes off to Rachel Reeves to spend as she sees fit, basically betting off some more of our debt?
Well, I am, because it's our council tax that goes via local councils to the local police that are being spent on the speed cameras, on the speed camera vans, and on the staff that are needed there. Therefore, you know, there's no incentive for the police to actually continue to police our roads in that way.
I mean, I'm all in favour of people who are dangerous drivers, people who go through red lights, people again. Here's the thing: if we want to make our roads a bit safer, can we have a cyclist licence, please, so that they are no longer going through red lights with impunity, and have a licence plate? We can fine them. That would work for me.
My one concern would be if the police saw this as a money-making exercise and then started to really go out and generate huge amounts.
Well, like they do, like local councils do with parking. It's one of their big earners now. And again, as opposed to sort of enabling people to, you know, you want to keep spaces free for people who are shopping. Basically, having confusing signposting, making it very, very strict, and making it virtually impossible for people to know when and where they. On my local high street, I could not tell you after 20 years whether I'm allowed to park in that spot or not, because the signposting is so confusing, and I think deliberately so to catch people out.
You don't need a Parker skateboard. I've seen you out on it.
I should, I mean, me on a skateboard, good lord. Anyway, Philip Ingram, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Look, covered a hell of a lot of ground today. Ian Collins is here.
Do you know what I really miss? The days when a physical policeman stopped you for speeding. When you were about 17 or 18 and the blue light would go on the M20 and a fellow would come to your window and go, having trouble taking off, are we, sir?
Do you know,
you'd think, OK, fair enough.
A friend of mine who's a copper, he used to they would say, I've never speeded before. And he goes, really? How long have you been driving? What, 40 years, right? And you posh just, what, 17? And how many miles do you drive most years? And so, isn't that, what an amazing career. Let's work it out. And he actually gets his mobile, I kid you not, as a copper, he gets his mobile phone out and he works out, what are the odds that the one time you speeded, I was behind you?
Brilliant. Brilliant.